Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen where we come together to conduct the town's business. It's nice to see so many of you that I recognize. Welcome. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we start public audience, I just want to make a comment that I never thought I would have to make. For many of us, this weekend was extremely upsetting and disturbing. What we witnessed in Charlottesville, Virginia was un-American at its core. There is no place in this great country of ours for racism, white supremacy, Nazis, the KKK, bigotry, hatred, and violence in pursuit thereof. Jeb Bush got it exactly right when he said the white supremacists and their bigotry do not represent our great country. All Americans should condemn this hatred. We in Simsbury condemn this vile hatred. In response to hatred we saw on display in Charlottesville this weekend, former President Obama quoted Nelson Mandela, a quote which I think bears repeating tonight. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. As we move forward from this, let us grow in love. And with that, we will begin public audience. We welcome public comment for up to 5 minutes. If someone feels they need more time or want to meet with me at a separate time, I'm happy to meet with you for as long as you want. Just let us know this is the time we set aside for the town's business, so we can't do unlimited public audience, but if you don't get your chance tonight, you can do it any other time. Just give me a call. Happy to meet with you, especially if there's coffee involved. So we will, or chocolate. Elaine knows me well, sadly. So we'll go from back to front, left to right. I'm looking for members who want to comment at public audience. Okay, go ahead.
I like that word, please.
Sure. Please come up and state your name and address.
First, I'd like to thank the Board of Selectmen for giving me the opportunity to speak my opinion on my opposition to the solar farm, proposed solar farm. Okay, first of all, everything here is in my opinion only. A big shame. 100,000 panels coming from China. China supports North Korea. Do we want them here? Ask Donald Trump. Simsbury should stand strong against this proposed project. I don't think we ought to shoot ourselves in the foot like Hartford did with their parking properties for a quick fix for cash. Now they have little income from those properties, just like the upfront cash the Finance Committee wants for this town. Me personally, my quality of life will be affected. I am right in the face of those panels. I could stand on my property line and breathe and put vapor on them. They're right in back of my property, right in back of my son's property on one side, and my other son on the other side. We bought those properties because of the nature. I go back there once or twice daily, smoke my 2 cigars, and at the end of that, going back there, I guess, it's a lot of stress for me at this point in my life. Again, I'm asking, stop the solar farm. Maybe someday the town could make some very good use of that land, if it comes available. There are 2 nice ponds back there, really nice ponds, that could be cleaned up. They would fit nicely with a nice venue for this growing town. No. About that 25 years, it's Deepwater says they're going to be gone. Please do not believe that. Once they plant one panel in that ground, they're there forever. Yeah. After the 25 years, they say they're gone. They're not gonna be gone. Nobody's gonna be able to afford that land in 25 years with the rate of inflation the way it's going now. You think Deepwater's gonna start growing tomatoes? I doubt it. Okay, I realize that this is a state project. I remember 25 years ago, one single man in China stood in Tiananmen Square by himself in front of a battalion of tanks and stopped them. So that said, if the town gets behind this, against this project, I believe it can be stopped. But we need the town in our corner. Lastly, if for some reason this solar project goes forward, I hope the panels will say made in the USA. Ask Trump about that again. And what little money the town will get up front from them panels to go into the, what they call it, the fund. I hope you give it to the fire department, the police department, and the great highway department. And that's all I got to say. Oh, wait a minute, one more thing. I believe if the town owned that land, maybe someday the schools, the children, can have a big barn there with animals, plants, this and that. I know you got town farm, but this would be much bigger. Thank you very much.
Could you give us your name and address, please? Oh, for the record.
They need your name and address for the record, thank
Who?
you. They need your name and address just for our record.
Oh, Joe Pizarro, 16 County Road, out in Simsbury.
How do you spell your last name?
P-O-Z-Z-A-T-O.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll
Thanks
go
for letting
back.
me speak.
Yeah, in the back.
I like you guys.
Once in a while.
Okay, my name's April Pizarro, 16 County Road. I'm Joe's wife. And as I just said, I live at 16 County Road. We have a son, Joe, who lives at 14 County Road, and another son, John, living at 20 County Road. The parcel of land selected by Deepwater Wind off County Road will deeply affect all of us. It's going to be in my backyard, my two sons' backyards, and one of my sons, it not only be in his backyard, it's going to be on his side. He's right in the corner. It's going to go on two sides of his property. And there's not very much woods or anything in between. A few members of this board actually came out to see firsthand how close this solar utility will be to our homes and the negative impact this could have on our well-being and the negative impact it will certainly have on our property values. I thank you all for taking the time to see this from our perspectives. I already emailed every member of this board with a long enough letter why we oppose of this utility. The bottom line is, it just does not belong in a residential neighborhood, and a utility of this magnitude should not be wasting valuable farmland. If this project goes through, it will forever change the makeup and character of our town and affect the future generations to come. I was going to end there, but then I did find something online about solar can be a health hazard. I just wanted to read a couple segments out of this. It says some of these technologies are unfortunately a health hazard to people who have electromagnetic hypersensitivity. These are people who get sick from electromagnetic radiation in very small amounts, such as what comes from cell phones, computers, electronic appliances, and solar panels. These studies suggest that radiation of the type coming from solar electric systems, some of which have been dubbed dirty electricity, may have long-term health effects on healthy people as well. It may cause hyperactivity, ADHD, in school children. And some people, since some of the milder symptoms of this syndrome are common and nonspecific, such as headaches, restlessness, a person near these panels may not even know his or her symptoms are caused by the solar systems. Anyways, I just wanted to bring that up too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, April.
All right, thank you.
Okay, going from Ms. Kilbourne.
Hi, I'm Christine Kilbourne Jones, and I live at 85 Hoskins Road. And I am not really going to speak much other than to tell you, as I had pointed out in my letter to the board, etc., that I am totally against this solar farm all around us because it is in a residential and a farming area. And I will point out that everybody, well, Deepwater has said, well, there's no ramifications for it. How can they say this? There has never been a farm of this magnitude in a residential area. How do they know how this is going to affect our children? I mean, I'm at the end of my life, but a lot of people are just starting out. What the heck is this going to do to them? They don't know. So I think it's being very cavalier. I don't think the idea of solar energy is, any of us are against it. It's the point that it is in a residential farming area. That is the main thrust. And thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Kilburn. All right, back to front. Okay, in the back, Mr., yes, yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting all of us to speak to you. My name is Alan Kozlov. My wife and I were residents of Simsbury for 26 years. We resided at 7 Hampshire Lane, which is off of County Road. At risk of some self-aggrandizement, I have to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an energy and environmental attorney. And I was contacted by Laura Nigro for professional assistance. And at this point, I am representing a number of residents who are either abutters to this proposed project or are nearby the project. I could bore you with a lot of technical details. I won't. Among my credentials, for several years, I was the director of the Energy and Environmental Law Practice Clinic at University of Connecticut School of Law. I took this matter because I'm not uninitiated in citing council proceedings. Indeed, I usually represent the proponent of projects. 2 such projects, major projects, were the Tired Energy Plant in Sterling, Connecticut, which co-generates approximately 36 megawatts of electricity from the combustion of waste tires, approximately 15 million per year. That project is no longer in existence, but it was for 25 years. Another project that I cited was the gas-fired project in Oxford, Connecticut, the so-called Tawanic Energy Project, nominally generating 680 megawatts of electricity from natural gas. The reason I cite these to you is that as the counsel, legal counsel for the entities that were the proponents, we did a number of things that are at variance with what the applicant in this case has done. First, we met with the town, notwithstanding the preemptive authorities of the council. We made application to Planning and Zoning Commission for site plan approval. We confined our project to the industrial park in both cases. And the project was subjected to a townwide referendum. None of that has occurred here. And if, by way of contrast, you are citing a cell tower, I would have no objection to it proceeding on a petition for declaratory ruling. But when you're talking about power facilities, especially facilities that are relatively unknown in terms of their environmental impact, this is the time when you throw out the preemptive authorities of the state agency and you come to the town and you work with the town to develop a way forward and hopefully, if you're the applicant, gain the town's approval. This has not been done here. We are generating a technical report on the water quality impacts of this project by experts. We expect to have that report available within a week or so. But more importantly, I'm here to urge you, given the procedural posture of this matter, to resist the citing of this facility on declaratory ruling proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. Kozlov. It's been 5 minutes.
I'm sorry.
That's
Thank you very
okay.
much. Thank you.
We did have the opportunity to meet the other day.
Yes, indeed, I wanted a chance to speak with the other members of
Absolutely.
the board. Thank you.
We're going to keep going. Steve?
Stephen Sutton, 45 Berkshire Way. I'm a direct abutter to this property. I'm very concerned about the scope and size of this project, given the lengths that this town has gone to actually keep the character and really make a good quality of life to all its residents. I'm concerned, obviously, about property values and all those. These are all unknowns, but of course, the health of my children. And more importantly, that I agree that it's just too big of a facility in a residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yes.
Good evening. My name's Steve Angeloff. I live at 42 Berkshire Way. I actually live across the street from Steve Sutton. I'm fairly new to the community.
Welcome.
Recently retired at the end of 2014. I spent 25 years in the Air Force. I'm a retired officer. And I selected Connecticut for a couple reasons. My wife's family is from Westfield, Mass. And the character, as Steve alluded to, everything about the town I really liked. And honestly, this is the first time I've ever owned a home. I've lived in one location for no more than about 2 to 3 years typically. So I was always either a renter, I lived on bases, I never really had this opportunity. So for me, moving here, learning about the town, really getting into the history of Simsbury, I know that this type of a project, the endeavor that obviously Deepwater is looking to do, or Deep Solar is looking to get into, is way too robust for our town. That is really we're a rural town. This, to me, this is an oxymoron of what the character and what Simsbury represents to the future going forward. It really bothers me that you have another state entity involved in this that somehow can make a decision on a town, and all the energy and all the everything going to it is going outside of our city and our state. To me, it's ludicrous. I don't understand it. Believe me, I understand bureaucracy. I've lived it. I was at the Pentagon for 4 years. It's horrendous. You know, Thomas Paine said it best. Government's at its best is evil, at its worst it's intolerable. And I don't mean that as to a slight on anyone here. I just say that as, it's a necessary evil in some cases. You're all fine folks. I really love our town, and this is my first time ever being involved in any kind of city politics. But I really think we have to take the pulse of the town. What is the right way going forward for our town? And try to develop the land right. I notice, as I drive down Hot Meadow, we always try to keep that character with how we decorate the front of stores and everything. We don't allow that commerciality to creep in here. That's commerciality. I understand the juxtaposition. We're trying to save money, or we're trying to, generate clean energy. But the bottom line is, look at it from the standpoint of the residents that live here, to have to see that every day. And we have to be a part of that. I don't agree. I hope that everyone here really looks hard at this and really makes a call based on our town and what's best for our town, not what's best for Massachusetts energy consumption or some outside agency. So again, thank you. I appreciate your time. I'm really excited to be a new resident. I love our town, and I look forward to seeing our town grow, but in a way that benefits everyone and keeps the character for what we have to do. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to town. Thank you for your service. Okay, going from back to front, Joan.
Joan Co., 26 Whitcomb Drive. At the last Board of Selectmen meeting on Thursday, July 27th, the board approved the gathering permit for the 3-day blues concert with RVs and camping against their disdain for the process at the prior meeting. Listening to the promoters of the blues concert, I thought they were living in a different universe. Testimony given was that 53-year-old concert goers do not smoke pot, although at a public audience, a resident gave her assessment of the Tedeschi Trucks concert with pot smoking, tailgating, and complete chaos from a dysfunctional performing arts center event run by Dave Ryan, president, and Tom Vincent, manager. Did 50-year-olds attend that concert? I would like to applaud Deputy Selectman Chris Kelly for his thoughtful conclusion that a 3-day concert with RVs and camping is inconsistent with the character of Simsbury, with a no vote. The Planning Commission's thoughtful conclusion with a negative referral was also ignored. In attendance at the meeting were members of the Conservation Commission that were concerned that they were not notified that the RVs and campers were parking in the wetlands. Had they had a referral, they would have voted against this activity. Members of the Board of Selectmen who voted in favor of the gathering permit for a 3-day blues concert with RVs and camping should not be elected to office. Cheryl Cook was not in attendance for the vote. Why did Selectman Mike Payne vote in favor of gathering permit when he has a contract to remove the budgets for the performing arts? On August 7, 2017, the Board of Ethics had a meeting to review discussion and any necessary motions concerning the compliance of Selectman Mike Payne with the January 29, 2014 advisory opinion. The minutes of the meeting state, quote, "After further discussion, Kevin Crimmins moved that the board authorize Rick Jones to approach First Selectman Lisa Heavner and/or Tom Cook, Director of Administrative Services, as appropriate to seek the guidance of the Board of Selectmen regarding the engaging of outside counsel to guide the board," end quote. Has action been taken with their referral? It appears that the Simsbury Farms Revenue Fund has a deficit of approximately $115,000. The deficits are continuing to increase, leaving the taxpayers to subsidize the golf course. Allocation of resources with diminished revenues from the state for education and roads, we the taxpayers can no longer subsidize the golf course that is mostly used by non-residents. The golf course complex should not be a priority for taxpayer dollars. I recently had a conversation with Phil Shank, town manager of Bloomfield, and was told they contract their golf course to the Arnold Palmer Management Company with favorable results. There are advantages with professional management of the golf course where members can use many golf courses under their management. I would urge the Board of Selectmen to initiate an RFP for the management of Simsbury Golf Course Complex. The taxpayers can no longer support increased losses year after year. I am not in favor of having shared parking and other services between Eno Hall and Fiddler's Green. The assignment of spaces at Eno parking lot would not alleviate the parking from tailgating during concerts, since nobody enforces no tailgating sign during the concerts. Most people will not park at Eno Hall and walk to Fiddler's Green even if the spaces were available. The dumpster presently on town land should be removed from their property. I'm concerned that shared service do not make good neighbors. This is creating a bad precedent and should not be approved. The Board of Selectmen should not approve authorizing town staff to negotiate construction contract with Simscroft Echo, Mike Gerard, President, for Town Farm Park improvements. Since all the applicants were above the bid that exceeded the budget, the town should reduce the scope and rebid the contract. Since all bidders exceeded the budget, why give preferential treatment to one company over another? This gives the appearance of favoritism and is unprofessional. I am concerned about the precedent of creating a text amendment to the zoning regulations to appease a single person. Now that Dave Ryan, president of the Performing Arts Center, received this favorable treatment, I would like to have a text amendment that allows the town to mow my lawn since it is on town right-of-way. How many other text amendments is the town going to approve for political operatives? I am concerned that First Selectman Lisa Heavner has allowed CTEC Solar to provide Simsbury Community Farm with solar panels when they owe the town over $46,943 in taxes. The Board of Selectmen should inform the residents of Simsbury who enthusiastically voted for a town manager the process of the consultant. All of my comments will be posted on Simsbury Patch, Twitter at Joan Co, Newsfeed at Facebook, and Simsbury Forum Topics. Thank you for listening.
Sure. Keep going from Chris.
Hi, Chris Barnett, 15 Oxyoke Drive, excuse my voice. I first want to thank the boards and commissions that provided input to the Board of Selectmen for all of their hard work regarding the Deepwater Wind Solar Project. It was a lot of information to take in a short period of time, and I know their input's going to be very valuable to you as you make a decision. I want to point to two documents that we use often here in Simsbury, the 2007 Plan of Conservation and Development and our current zoning regulations. Those are documents that we look at projects that we as a town use on a daily basis when we're evaluating proposals for the town of Simsbury. Those documents are a result of decades worth of hard work by volunteers and voted officials in this town that maintain the character and the beauty of our town that attracts all of us here. Those are documents, they're living documents. I think you need to take those two documents very specifically in a lot of consideration when you're evaluating your position regarding this project. Both the Zoning Commission and the Planning and Conservation Commission, as I understand it, have taken a position that it is not consistent with either one of those documents. And the proposed 2017 Plan of Conservation and Development, which we are having a meeting on in September, I believe, another public hearing on, also articulates that as well. Those documents are what brought us all here. And I don't want the work of decades worth of volunteers getting to where we're at today to be for naught, to allow a project that is inconsistent with those two things to be allowed here in Simsbury. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, so going from back to front, going this way. In the back, green shirt. Oh, I missed you. I'll catch you next. Yes.
Hi, my name is Jessica Parise at 102 North Saddle Ridge. Please excuse my voice, I'm fighting a cold as we speak. I'm not an abutter to this project, but just a concerned citizen. I'm here to urge the board to oppose this project. Let me start by saying I'm a strong proponent of alternative energy sources. I think it is absolutely critical to the future of our planet. That said, these projects have to be situated in appropriate locations. The proposed site is not an appropriate location for a host of reasons, some of which have been articulated and some of which I'd like to speak to briefly now. First, this is prime agricultural land currently being farmed. The loss of precious farmland is counter to our town's values. One thing that's a huge draw for Simsbury residents is being able to drive through town and see things growing. It's a rare thing nowadays. Second, the proposed project intends to deforest 35 acres of land, which again is unacceptable, contrary to our town planning, and counter to the environmental benefits solar panels provide. Third, the installation of 100,000 panels will fundamentally change the character of our town and is inconsistent with what draws people to Simsbury. Fourth, my understanding is that there has not been a proper economic impact analysis to understand the full impact of this project on the property values and the resulting loss of tax revenue, not just in the surrounding area, but all throughout Simsbury. Nor has there been an analysis of the impact on local businesses as a result of the likely fewer residents who are drawn to Simsbury as a result of this proposed project, and because of the fundamental change to our community's character. Fifth, while I've not studied this issue, I understand the project does not meet the definition of utility, and thus its approval should not be in the hands of the siting council. Instead, it should be squarely within the jurisdiction of the town and its zoning laws. This project is clearly inconsistent with our town zoning laws, and I hope the town strongly opposes the usurpation of its power. Finally, I try to evaluate things in my life with a cost-benefit view in mind. As currently proposed, I cannot conceive how the benefits of this project outweigh the cost to our town. The limited tax revenue, which is a small fraction of the town budget, will have no perceptible impact on our residents' individual tax burdens. On balance, this project is inconsistent with the vision for our town and is not good for the future of our community. I urge the board to avoid the trap of being penny wise and pound foolish and to strongly oppose this project. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, so.
I'm Liz Lansky. I live at 44 Berkshire Way, and I'm a direct abutter to the Deepwater Wind proposal. I've actually stood up a handful of times before and reached out to several other folks. I think my issues are really two. One is, as a direct abutter, it will be on the north side of my property. Currently, there's a few hundred, probably about 300 or 400 yards. Stephen and Stephen are my neighbors, of woods. Their plan is to cut part of that out and to leave a boundary of about 200 feet of forest that's there. But I think the bigger issue for me is we all try to maintain our homes. We do everything we can to try to live as nicely as we can. We put a lot of time and effort into our property, into maintaining our home and our neighborhood. And it's hard to realize that somebody's going to put up a chain link fence that possibly has 2 feet of barbed wire, because my understanding is that it has to be 6 feet of chain link fence with 2 feet of barbed wire, or an 8-foot fence that has to surround the property, their utility, to make it safe. And that's a requirement. That's in juxtaposition to folks that spend an awful lot of time maintaining their properties and their homes. So again, in very layman's terms, that's what Chris talked about. I think the whole town spends a lot of time and energy on trying to have a nice place to live. And I'm not sure that this is such a nice thing that's about to go in and up. And the other part that's hard to accept is the process. Eminent domain, it's just basically being plunked down, and because, and I guess I'd like to encourage you to try to use your voice, that you do have a seat at the table at the siting council. I think through us banding together, we're trying to get a seat at the table as well to speak up, but it's kind of being forced upon us with minimal input. And I know that they're willing to listen to us. And they also have an RFP. They have a requirement of how much electricity they need to generate. But it's really a huge contrast of a nice neighborhood and a solar utility farm next door. So I would encourage you, I would love to see that the town gets to say what they have to say, because I think if we all could use our voice, I would accept if the town said, this is a wonderful thing and here's how we want to do it. And I think that the town would speak up and say, oh my gosh, this is not the character that we want. But we've lost that voice because of the process that is here. So I think anything that we can do, I'm not sure, I am a proponent of actually solar farming. I think that it's a great thing, but it's the process and the style in which they're doing it that I think is a problem for me. So.
Thank you. Okay, Laura.
Hello, I'm Laura Niger. I live at 4 Kilbourne Farm with my husband Tom and our 3 children. And I've spoken before, but I wanted to speak again. You know, it's interesting. I hear that the town doing everything that they can to have a thoughtful process to have an opinion. And that's really what I am here to say, that we need the town to absolutely have an opinion. Not facts and figures, but an actual opinion, that they're either for or against this, because it's that important. Although we, as abutters, have a voice, our voice is muted. And make no mistake, the town very much matters. And what the town has to say very much matters. Now, we know from the Siting Council's source of authority, intellectually as a lawyer, that they're limited in what they can look at, and it's air and water quality, and Alan rightfully spoke to that. And we have hired an environmentalist, as has the town, which I applaud, to look at the, amongst things, the air and water quality, and all of that matters. But intellectually, I think all of us would agree, at least the people that are directly impacted by this, that it feels like it should be so much more. And we know that the Farm Bill exists, and the Farm Bill breathes in that so much more. But a question remains as to whether or not that will, in fact, have an influence because of the timing of when the bill was passed and for when the RFP was submitted. But let's assume that it does. Then that so much more matters. And what the town has to say matters. And we get a stronger voice because it matters. Never did we imagine, when we saved for 13 years to buy our dream house in what looked like a peaceful residential community, that it would be a massive solar utility. And that's what it is. This is not a farm. This is a utility. I hear people say it's not an active farm. If you can say that that's not an active farm, you do not know your community. It is absolutely an active farm, and it is beautiful. And it is what we've come to know as the environment. Everybody's talked about the POCD, and we've talked about how it doesn't fit. We've talked about the zoning and how it possibly doesn't fit into the zoning. We talked about whether it's a public utility and the thought that it might not be a public utility. All of these things matter, as does the air and quality impact on the land. I'm asking the town to have an absolute decision on this and not to waver, and to find against it so that our voice can be magnified. We are trading green for green, there's no doubt of that. It is the placement of this facility that seems to be the biggest issue, at least for me. It is not green energy. Green energy is good. I've said it, I don't even know how many times. It's just inappropriately and ill-conceived placed. I think if you, again, intellectually, you were to ask anybody between 2 sites, if you could find a more appropriate site, would you place this in and amongst 15-plus residential communities? I don't think there's anyone, green advocacy or not, that would say yes. So what can we do to band together to find how we can find solutions to alternative sites? Is that possible? I implore you to please help us find that solution as we head into this.
Thank you. In the back? No. Well, look at you next, and then Mr. Couch. You next, and then Mr. Couch.
Hey, Carol, 28 Gordon Street, been there for 41 years. I live right across the street from the north end of where this is all going to go. And you can look out my front window. They're growing squash there this summer. 2 years ago it was pumpkins. 3 years ago it was corn. Next year it's going to be scaffolding holding up all these solar panels pitched away from my house. The idea I don't like is somebody coming in and say it's going to go from agriculture residential to industrial. I'm going to be looking out at steel and the backside of panels. During the 40s and 50s, when that was used to grow tobacco, pesticides were introduced to that ground that did not break down. Trichloropropane, ethyl dibromide, dibromo, chloropropane. Those products are still in the ground today. All the houses in my neighborhood have wells. More houses than not have filters in those houses by the DEP put in 20 or so years ago. Now, when they start drilling tens of thousands of holes at least 4 feet deep to get the concrete below the frost line, what's it going to do churning up all that material? Is my well going to be worthless? Then the house becomes worthless. Now, these solar panels supposedly are going to be made out of some material that's going to last 25 years. I've yet to find anything that sits out in the sun for any long period of time that doesn't chemically break down. Where are these chemicals going to go? Right into the ground. Matching up with these three products, who knows what the outcome is going to be. I'm urging you folks, when you meet with these other level people, say no. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll.
Since I'm at the tail end, forgive me if I repeat some
No,
issues.
it's all good.
But my name is Linda Lowe. I live at 8 Kilbourne Road. I'm in a butter to this solar power plant being proposed on the 280 acres of land, 80% of which are zoned for 1 acre residential lots. Since we first met with Deepwater in May, that's when we were notified of the project. Many of us abutters and other concerned residents, we've spent hours of time researching and educating ourselves as to how this proposal came to be, what the issues are, and what we can do to make a difference in the process. And believe me, it wasn't easy attending many hours of these town meetings, although I've gotten to know a lot of you, which is great. And reading state and town regulations, reading publications about the impact of solar plants. And I first want to thank the Board of Selectmen and all the town committees for all the hard work they put into this process to evaluate the project. Personally thank Lisa and Sean, who's not here, for responding to my emails that I sent, and also to John and Elaine for coming by the neighborhood on, I think it was Saturday, to get my input on the project. That really meant a lot to me. But I have to state, I'm against this project, not only from a gut feeling I have where I know it's going to ruin the character of northern part of Simsbury and significantly reduce my property value of the home I love so much, but I'm also against this project based on the conclusions that I've come to, that I've reached from all the hard work that all of us have done, in this room and some people outside, in evaluating this project. But, what I was happy to find over time of doing all of this is I feel like there's much more evidence that the project does not belong in the middle of our neighborhoods. And so some of the important points I wanted to bring up were, first, the Connecticut Siting Council will rule on the suitability of this site, and they require Deepwater to attempt to adhere to the intent of local zoning, planning, and wetlands regulations. Deepwater, from reading their proposal, was counting on this project to be considered a public utility and therefore be allowed as a special exemption in any zone, including residential. And it turns out, from what I heard our zoning board say, that this solar plant is not considered a public utility, and therefore it's not eligible for a special exemption, and therefore is not allowed per our local zoning regulations. So that was good news. Second, our town planning committee determined that the proposed solar plant is not consistent with the POCD that was mentioned and will have a negative impact on our town character. Specifically, page 86 of that document addresses the northern gateway, which is this area, and it recommends residential uses and zoning along Hoskins reinforce the character of that neighborhood. And I'm going to add that a utility-scale solar power plant does not reinforce the character of our neighborhood. Third, this Senate Bill 943 was passed almost unanimously by our legislature, and that would require a much more critical review of this project, as it does other power plants and even cell towers, from what I've heard. The certificate process that would be required would evaluate many other environmental issues in much more depth, evaluate the impact on farmland, forests, residential, wildlife, historical, cultural issues. This project misses that mandatory review by one day. And who in their right mind would be opposed to this kind of review for an unprecedented 280-acre solar power plant in the middle of our neighborhood? The fact that soil testing and remediation would possibly be required due to contaminants released during construction, as the other gentleman said, could enter the aquifer, that's reason enough to, if any of us can do this, to try to support applying this Senate bill. Fourth, deforestation of 35 acres and installation of 100,000 solar panels would definitely be disruptive to wildlife habitats, as supported from studies that I found in, or not me, but we have found in Scientific American, BirdLife International, and from some of our own government agencies.
Laura, thank you. It's been
Okay.
5 minutes. If you want to put it in writing, or you give it to us.
One more important point, it's on the emotional side. The solar plant absolutely must not go south of Hoskins, surrounding that one historical home. That would be unforgivable. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Mr. Couchman, and then we'll get to you.
Thank you for allowing me to address the
You're welcome.
Board of Selectmen. For the record, I was on this since the inception. This has been a well-calculated, inside, thought-up proposal. It's been well-calculated, and it originated right in this room, in my opinion. I attended the zoning board meeting in the library with these ladies and gentlemen when they discussed solar paneling for the dump, and the people from the airport came down and said that they were against it because they felt it was against the pilots coming in, that the reflection of the panels would possibly blind them. And it was bandied about, and this was the test. And they brought it forward and they voted on it. Mr. Payne voted in the affirmative, and many of the others voted in the affirmative. And it went forward. The next thing I knew of, in May, they sprung it on us. You people had no knowledge what was going to go on. They didn't mail you even a postcard. You had no knowledge what was going to go on. And in May it started, and I opposed it from the inception. And I went on record, and I took out my wallet, or I offered my wallet, and I says, the only way you're going to beat these people is to sue them and stop fooling with them because it was fixed. And I said, and I'll give you a donation to start to pay for the console. But don't fool with these people. Get yourself a good lawyer and take them to court. They waffle. They just waffled 2 weeks ago. They told us they weren't going to allow fires. They weren't going to allow RVs to be there overnight. They weren't going to allow a 3-day concert. And when the rubber hit the road, they voted for all three.
They voted for all three and left us hanging by our thumbs. And now, we come to another situation, and I've been saying all along, the 5th Congressional District is corrupt. And anybody here want to debate me? I'll debate. And let's go to Lucia Wilson Foley from the 5th District. She lives in Simsbury. She spent a year in federal prison in West Virginia. You go to John Rowland, member of the 5th Congressional District. We go to Mr. Donovan, a candidate to run for Congress, the Democratic Speaker of the House, and he was cited. The only difference, there was no justice there because his whole staff went to jail, and he didn't go to jail. One fella took the rap for the whole bunch. He went for 5 years, federal prison. Getting back to, I came tonight to address the issue. I had no intention to make any comment, but in view that it's on the agenda, I've taken my valuable time to devote to you people. Now, I just want to leave you with one thought. I heard people say here, well, the rest of the town is not concerned about it because they don't abut it. Let me tell you one thing. I'm a veteran. I'm a combat veteran. And my motto is, he's my buddy, he's not ahead of me. And I'm with you 100%, and the people of Simsbury are with you 100%. And what these people do is they're gonna do because they're gonna do it. And don't take my word for it, investigate. Look into see who the attorney is for this deep water. See if it's Pullman and Conley. See if they've already taken it to West Haven or New Haven. Look into it, find out who the attorneys are. Find out who the players are. And you'll see it originated right in this town hall. And like I say, I stand by my word, and you need a donation, come to me, I'm more than happy to kick it off. Now, getting back to what I wanted to address. I came here to tell you that you approved this 3-day jazz festival, you approved the RVs, you approved the camping.
Thank you,
And
Mr. Couchman.
I'm sorry if
That's
you
okay.
take
It's
my
been 5
time,
minutes.
but
I'd be happy to listen to your concerns about that. If you want to stop in
Thank
tomorrow, I
you
have
for
some
allowing me
time.
to address the issue.
Sure.
But don't trust what they're gonna do to you. Get yourselves good attorneys.
Jason Polayes, P-O-L-A-Y-E-S. Yeah, 14 Saxon Brook Drive, kind of in a butter. I guess there's some preserved space between us. I don't know if that technically makes us in a butter or not. I appreciate Chris and Elaine coming out this afternoon, or yesterday or 2 days ago, to hear some concerns. I'd just like to make sure that the town has an opinion if, or rather demands, if it actually goes forward and pushes for what's best for Simsbury in the event. Even if you vote no, the siting council says yes, and it's going to go in. So I'd like to make sure that the town has as much say as possible working with Deepwater to at least make it workable, as least disruptive as possible. And I brought up these points before, but I guess just to put them on public record, I'm concerned. I have 10 chickens and 2 kids. Animal migration patterns, I have bears going through all the time. If all of a sudden there's going to be fencing everywhere, I don't know where the bears, bobcats, coyotes are going to start to walk. Maybe more on the street, maybe to other neighborhoods that now that aren't fenced. So I'd be concerned with how they're handling the migration patterns of large animals. Although they've said they've seen footprints, but they've never actually seen any. They could come by any day, and I've got 3 walking by. So I'm happy to have them over. So the fencing would be a concern. The screening, I know they provided their proposal, and the town is going through kind of an assessment for what we would ask. I would say that in any kind of negotiation that they be as amenable as possible to whatever it is that feels like New England as opposed to vinyl screening needs to be part of the process. So whether that be, and I mentioned it, stone walls or split rail fences or something that makes it feel more like New England as opposed to vinyl fencing, I think that absolutely has to be on the table because I understand the chain link fence to protect their investment, but beyond that, I think there's something that could be done. They had mentioned walking trails. and sidewalks, and I don't know where people would walk if they have no place to park or how they would get to it. I also know there are power lines there, and I imagine Eversource would have an issue if someone were to move those lines. And any of the screening that they want to do, be it trees if the town suggests, I would imagine the power lines have to move, because otherwise the trees are going to get cut down in a few years when they get too big. So I'd be curious as to how Deep Wind is recommending their paths work with the fencing, between a berm, between fencing, where it goes, where people access it, what neighborhoods it accesses, and the whole nine. Certainly, they're not going to share what their tax abatement strategy would be, or what they might ask, or maybe they would, or maybe you could ask them directly. But I think if they want to be a good citizen, as they said in that meeting at the high school and in other meetings, then they should share as much as they can to inform the folks of what they're requesting, because they presented it as, we're going to be the best tax thing that you've ever seen. And I don't think that's true. So if they really want to put a good foot forward, and they don't have to meet every demand, but I think it'd be realistic of them to say, we're going to amortize it over X years, or we're going to do something. I think that's a realistic ask. Whether or not they share, I don't know. The number of panels, to me, is also kind of interesting. Proposal 1 had allotment of land. Proposal 2 has less land, but the same amount of power generated. I'm assuming they're either using better panels or less panels and not generating as much electricity. So I'm curious as to how, if they started this in a year from now, if the panel technology is 1.5 times greater, can they do this with less? I would be curious as to how that maps out. And they've never done this before, so I don't know if they would know the answer, but I imagine if they're going to invest in something of this magnitude, they could find out what the proper answer. Anyone who has solar panels on their house knows it. They ask you when you're buying, do you want to buy the better panel or the medium panel, right? Less panels, but the same amount of energy. I'm wondering why they're not doing that, and maybe they are, but that hasn't been in the proposal. And then just for the town, if this doesn't go forward, and by some reason they say the town gets to, this isn't going to be built, what's your plan? I'm not asking for an answer now, but to make sure that it's clear that you say, well, going forward, here's how this will not happen, or here's what we really want to do with that land if it ever becomes available, or here are the ideas we like from Deepwater regarding nature, or the farms or other things. But I'd like to make sure that becomes part of any discussion going forward. Thank you.
Anyone else who'd like to speak? Missed anyone?
I'd like to say one more thing.
Joe, can we come back to you at the end of the meeting? You know, we generally don't give second things, but if you want me to stay after the meeting, I'd be happy to listen to your final comments after the meeting. Okay, Joe? All right, we are going to go on to presentations, and we are going to start with a very exciting announcement. The GFOA, Certificate of Achievement. Drum roll, please. This is our Director of Finance. It actually is a big deal, and I'm going to let Sean tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. Well, this is the Certificate for Achievement in Excellence in Financial Reporting. I know. Keep your seatbelts fastened. I am proud to say this is the 18th year in a row we have received this award. This is for excellence in our financial reports that we produce every year. And again, it's just a testament to the hard work of my office, our staff, Deb Sweeney and Lori Souza. Also this year, our graduate intern from UConn, Tim Hanser, played a huge role when he was here. So anyway, it's a great award. This year I stuck the number on, or the date on. It's not crooked this year, which
On the low. Gold star for Sean.
Yes, exactly. So we're very proud.
Okay, we'll go on to quarterly updates. So, as you know, we're closing up the fiscal year situation. There's a lot of chaos. For those who are leaving, I am giving a pretty extensive update on the project, but you guys can watch it on TV. Okay, bye.
Sure, yeah. So we are still wrapping up fiscal 17 as we make some of the last year-end adjustments and transfers before the auditors come in next month. But you do have in front of you, and for anyone that would like copies, and there are more copies. What was another copy? Anyway, there's a few copies here, and I can get you more if anyone would like them. They were a little more exciting than the auditor award, so enjoy. But to wrap up fiscal 17, again, pre-audit, but these are going to be pretty close to the final numbers. Good news on the Board of Selectmen side, we are going to finish about $166,000 under budget. You can see all the various departments there. And I have just a few highlights, notes on why. We had a number of position vacancies this year, as you recall. Turnover in a number of departments, police department, including delaying of hiring for a few positions, and so finance, IT, social services as well. So that really helped us with some expenditure favorability this year. You'll see Public Works and Parks are slightly over budget. That is primarily due to the settlement of the AFSCME contract. You'll note that it's pretty close to the amount that's there in the contingency reserve for the transfer, which is good. And again, as we updated at our last update as well, the spot with the most pressure was definitely the health insurance line, something I know we also talked about during the budget planning process this year. That has been sort of addressed and corrected, I think, for fiscal 18, so we shouldn't have an overage in benefits and major medical insurance next year. But again, that was primarily due to enrollment changes and also the need to be budgeting the pre-funding of those HSA accounts, which we've now again addressed in the fiscal 18 budget. On the revenue side, we'll start with building department fees. They were significantly down this year over compared to budget. We budgeted $750,000, came in at $360,000. And this has been an interesting line to monitor. I actually have a chart there at the bottom of page 2 showing the last 4 years. You'll note we budgeted $450 one year and collected $650 that year, $500 the next year, $600, and then you'll recall last year we budgeted $600 and collected $1.1 million. If you actually average those last 4 years, we have been averaging about $700,000 a year, which is what we budgeted next year for fiscal 18. A lot of what's been happening is we have some of these developers that are coming in and paying a lot of their fees up front. And so you can have kind of some of these as a timing issue. For instance, the Silverman Group comes in and pays all of theirs up front this month or next. That could be half of our building fee budget in one fell swoop. So, ECS, education cost share, you'll see, no surprise there. That was down $200,000 due to the mid-year cuts at the end of December. But again, on the positive side, conveyance taxes significantly above budget by $182,000. We had additional money from municipal revenue sharing. I don't anticipate that being there next year. But we had favorable, put that in the bank for fiscal 17. And then again, our property tax collection, again, you know, we budget, we under budget our collection rate slightly so that we have some favorability there in case we need it. So all told, we have about $800,000 in favorability on the revenue side this year. So all told, a good year. Maybe the last good year. Let's see. So I'll just kind of move through. I think I went through revenue. Simsbury Farms Special Revenue Fund. So unfortunately, not a good year for Simsbury Farms. Missed the revenue target by about $148,000. Came in under budget on expenditures by $35,000. But primarily golf was down. I know the weather, I don't know if Jerry's not here tonight, right? Jerry could speak more to it, but golf and some program revenue targets were definitely missing. Golf course was down about $100,000 in revenue. So those are your Simsbury Farms quick snapshot. And finally, I just wrap up with sort of my initial year-end projection for fund balance. We don't have the Board of Ed's final numbers yet, but they'll project it to be pretty close to on budget. If you walk through where we ended fiscal 16 and started fiscal 17 with unassigned fund balance of about $11.2 million, I'm projecting our unassigned fund balance to increase by about $400,000. Again, we budgeted a use of reserves as part of the fiscal 17 budget, you'll recall, but you can kind of walk through what's happening there. So that would be about 12.4% of our approved fiscal 17 budget. So let's see, early look, and happy to answer any questions.
So thank you for that. It's a short document, but it actually takes a long time to put together, so we are appreciative of that. Sean, one of the things that did happen is we did get a letter from OPM saying that they're going to delay reimbursement of the car tax. As you know, we sent our bills at 32 mils. because that's what the law was at the time when the bills were due. We have since been told, we have been promised that don't worry, if we do that, we will reimburse you for the lost revenue or we'll change the law. Neither of those things happened, and we have been told we will be down 1.3 million, at least delayed unless there's a budget and there's a fix to that. So did you want to speak to that or anything else?
That's
we
right.
know?
My understanding, I know there'll be a state budget update after, but yeah, right now at the state level, we're operating under executive order of the governor. And so as part of the resource allocation plan that he put in place, we were entitled to $1.3 million as part of that plan, but they are delaying that payment, obviously, hopefully until there's a budget. So if there's a budget soon, we'll reassess the full impact of Simsbury. That's correct.
And there's a lot of information out there about what's happening through the governor's process, and is he going to decrease ECS payments prior to there being a budget? And we do anticipate that that will happen if there's not a budget. So in terms of revenue coming in, ECS payment is a general revenue that comes in. We do expect to see that diminished as well. So, but there is a lot of uncertainty out there, and there is a lot of misinformation, and there is a lot of lack of information. So we are waiting on all those pieces as we go through. So we're not reacting at this point because it's too soon to react. I think there are 5 budgets out there. So we'll have to hopefully get a good update from our delegation in Simsbury to let us know where we are with that. But I open it up to questions for Sean. Cheryl.
Just quick, if that's okay. On the Lisa's point of misinformation and confusion, and I know this isn't your area, but I know a lot of parents are talking about school systems that are delaying openings, that, parents are nervous, about teacher layoffs and things like that. And I don't know if you have any reassurance to offer parents that that type of action is not coming from our Board of Ed right now.
Sure, yeah, I can't speak for the Board of Ed, but
I know.
no, there's no indications, and nor at the Board of Finance level. We're confident in the way we planned for the fiscal 18 budget as best we can. We built in over $3 million of contingency, plus other options that we have to fill a hole. But certainly, you can only plan for. We know some of those budget scenarios were $10 million, and
Right.
we didn't budget for that. So, I think we're just going to have to see, and hopefully getting some more information as soon as possible will help. But, as of right now, I think
None of those
staying the
drastic
course, and
steps are
we're
going to
confident in the way we plan.
So school's opening on time and everybody's.
As of right now, it absolutely is. I did speak with Mr. Curtis today.
Great,
He told me
great. So
that,
just,
yeah. Unless something has
in
changed
an
in the
effort
last
to
couple
quash
of hours.
misinformation,
Yes.
then we should just say that.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
But we will be watching the situation very carefully, and we may have to make adjustments. If you've seen my first Selectwoman's report, which hopefully everybody gets, the first thing is that there may be an adjustment to the mill rate. As you know, with losing 1.3 million is almost half of our contingency gone, and it's not even a month. So we're going to be watching how things develop. Any other questions for Sean? All right, thank you, Sean. Very much appreciated. Okay, now we go on to our.
Nice job with the dates there.
Yes, we're very proud of it.
Well
Very
done,
proud
Sean.
of you. I invite Senator Witkos and Representative Hampton up to give us an update on the budget, and hopefully some good news, or at least some certainty would be helpful.
Good evening. Thank you so much for inviting Senator Witkos and myself. We're honored to represent Simsbury at the state capitol. Obviously, we wished we would be here with better news, but we are 45 days plus without a state budget. And what has been alluded to, the governor now has executive authority over the state budget and is making cuts wherever he sees fit. And we're starting to see the dire effects in many ways. Obviously, the effects on municipalities, on our schools, social services, the IDD community, the business community. There's absolutely no predictability. And there are 5 different budgets out there, including the governor's, that are being negotiated. We were just talking earlier about the status of negotiations. We were told that there were some positive developments, although I was told yesterday to hold September 11th for a session. as late as that. So obviously, the longer it goes, the worse it gets for all of us. So I know we're promoting and pursuing a budget as soon as possible, and one that certainly does as little harm to our municipalities as possible. A major event in July was obviously the passage of the CBAC agreement, which certainly changes the dynamics of the budget moving forward. So I'll let Senator Whitcomb add his 2 cents.
Thanks. I want to say, unfortunately, we don't have a gold star like Sean gave to you for a certificate of achievement from the state of Connecticut for their financial planning. Thank you.
No, you can rent it.
Down, and we still don't even have enough money to cover the budget deficit that we're looking at. A couple things. One, I wholeheartedly believe that the motor vehicle mill rate will go back up to 37. It's only because of the lack of a passage of the state budget that it's not at 37 mills. It was already in place in statute. It was going to drop to 32. You had to follow the law. A lot of the communities opted just to delay, but that's a decision made at the local level. While there are 5 budgets out there, well, I wouldn't say there's 5. No budgets are balanced at this point, not even the governor's budget. With the passage of the CBAC agreement, he's not allowed to find the efficiencies that he had anticipated and built into his budget, and those would be closing some of the state-operated group homes, closing a prison, looking at closing Southbury Training School, and that would have afforded him the opportunity to save about $220 million. Because of the no layoff clause, he's not able to do that. So his budget's out of balance by $220 million. What's happening now, at least I can speak for the Senate Republican caucus, we are going back and attempting to draft a budget based on the passage of the CBAC agreement. As you know, your representatives from Simsbury did not support that labor concession deal. We just felt that locking ourselves into 2027 with a no layoff clause for the next 4 years is just something we can't do in this economy, because we don't know where we're going. We've passed 2 of the largest tax increases in the history of the state of Connecticut. It still did not bring in the anticipated revenue that was anticipated. That's part of the problem. Long-term, long-time outstanding liabilities are coming to roost. Our assumptions on what we see for our returns are way overestimated. So all those things together have compounded the problem. As far as the leadership meeting, there's been 2 leadership meetings in the past 2 weeks. The Speaker of the House wants to have a dance partner, I'll say. He doesn't care who it is. He just doesn't want to be the governor. He's looking to see where can we find some common ground from any of the 4 caucuses. And I mean a caucus, House Democrats, House Republicans, Senate Democrats, Senate Republicans. Can one of those 4 caucuses join with the House Democratic caucus and attempt to pass a budget? I personally think if a budget's going to be passed on a bipartisan basis, it's going to be done in the Senate. And then that'll allow for some movement in the House, because if there's Republicans that are voting for a budget in the Senate, that I think will provide some cover for some of those downstairs, because in the House Republican caucus, they've said that they're not voting for any budget that has a tax increase. We've said ourselves that if there is a small tax increase, it has to be offset by some relief to the municipalities, whether that's through collective bargaining, being able to renegotiate contracts, if need be, if a reduction in ECS, looking at removing some unfunded mandates. The Speaker was amenable to that, so we'll see where that process takes us. I don't anticipate a budget passing until somewhere maybe the last week of September. I think that the largest amount of dollars that communities get are in education funding, and you get your 25% of state funding around the first week of October. You get your second 25% in February, and then the 50% balance in May. And why is that? Because we don't have the money, so we delay your 50%. You'd think you'd upload it in the front part of the school year, but we have to wait for April tax collections in order to afford to pay where we're going. Now, as the governor is operating under an executive order, there is no ECS formula any longer. It doesn't exist in state statute. So the governor has taken some of the parameters that have been addressed in Judge McCauser's ruling, which is being appealed, by the way, by the Attorney General's office for funding. And he has said that the money needs to go towards the poorest communities. And that is how he will derive the next executive order. This executive order expires September 30th. So I think if we're very close to having a budget, what I anticipate happening is the governor will come out, we'll call the leadership in, and he'll present to us his second executive order, and we're going to see how bad it is, and then nobody will want to vote for that, so it may force some hands to, bend a little bit on the budget. If not, I'm hopeful that the Speaker of the House will allow his chamber to come in to vote on a mini budget, so we create an education formula. I think we're committed to doing that in the legislature. We don't, on all sides of the aisle, like any of the governor's proposals, whether that's shifting the teachers' pension responsibilities on the municipalities or taking away, basically flatlining, I think his proposal was to Simsbury, all of your education funding. And in fact, you'll end up writing a check to the state of Connecticut
We will.
instead of receiving any additional education dollars or any dollars. So I think that's what's going to happen. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot to share with you, but I think that's going to be the anticipated, for us anyways, around the last week of September is when I think that will be. We don't have a date set in the Senate. There are vacations going on this week, so I know there's no negotiations this week. John and I are not on vacation. We're here, ready to go to work, but people are away. And in the legislature, it's so closely divided between the parties, there's an agreement basically, in the Senate, unless 100% of the people can be there, we don't meet. Because that would, obviously put the other party in the majority. And that was an agreement we had on opening day. And in the House, it's so close that I don't think they want to do that either. So the deadline, I think, for us is try to get it done by October 1st.
So I would just say, I know there have been times when the legislature has not gotten a budget right away, but I don't know that there's been a time where the swings are 10 million of the magnitude. So I'll just say with heartfelt passion, time is of the essence, because we do need to make our plans. If we're going to have to do serious adjustments, certainly December is too late.
Well, one of the things, I represent 11 communities, so it goes the spectrum. Some of the communities I represent have a fund balance, referring to Ben Barnes's letter, as low as 7.3% to up to 24%. And different communities are approaching this in a different way, and they're trying to be tactful, I guess, if you will, as to trying to figure out what is the governor going to use that information for. Yes. And they're under the belief that if we give them a rosy picture of what our fund balance, what we anticipated to be in 2018, that means there's going to be more of a cut. But if you're already cut zero, what my recommendation would be to you all is to give worst case scenario, but to respond to the letter. One of the communities I represent, the Board of Selectmen decided they're not responding to the letter. And I said, if there happens to be any grant money or anything available, I said, you just cut your nose off to spite your face. We don't have any money. I don't anticipate grant money, but sometimes bonding just happens, and the steep grant money is done through bonding. So if you didn't respond back, count yourself out. So when you deliberate on how you want to derive that fiscal year 18 number, I would take the worst case scenario that you can possibly do and present that.
So for people who may not be aware what Kevin is talking about, I did receive, and Sean did receive a letter from Ben Barnes at OPM requesting that we give estimates of how much money we have. And our estimated, the amount of money we'll have at the close of 2017 and what we think we're going to have in 2018. The implication, although they haven't said that, is they want to know who has the money and who can absorb the cuts. So we are working on that response. Melissa and Sean and Tom are working on a first draft. We've gone back and forth on how to respond. Some people are doing long letters. We're going to keep it very short and factual, but use the numbers that are out there. And the governor's numbers are dramatic, and we're going to use his. We've always used his numbers. So, but it is sort of a shocking request to receive. because of the implications.
I think we received a copy of Jim Aiden's today.
Okay.
And
If you
once
could
again, John and I are
forward,
willing to come back once we have some more information to another selectmen's
Thank
meeting to
you.
update you as, or answer any questions that you have.
no, we appreciate all the work you're doing, and anything you can do to get a budget. Certainty is better than uncertainty, especially right now, but thank you for your efforts, we appreciate it. I think, John, you were going to give us an update on the state water plan?
You were part of the state water plan.
Oh, okay.
Some good news from the legislature. My first piece of legislation that I submitted upon being elected in response to Yukon diverting water from the Farmington River and the lack of a statewide water plan, that legislation passed, and the Connecticut Water Planning Council has completed a statewide water plan, which will address all aspects of our state's water supply in terms of public safety, environmental, business, agriculture, or drought. This, per the legislation, it was due by 2018, so we will take it up in this February session. So it's really exciting. We're at the point of a public hearing. Lisa, I think I sent you the information. Maybe we can post it, or you can post it on the town website. I know they're going to have a public hearing in Simsbury, probably in September, October. But I wanted to thank Senator Witkos, because he was 15 minutes before midnight, got it over the hump to pass the Senate many years ago. So thank you for, this is a bipartisan effort, and for the town's support of this critical issue. So it's exciting to see it come to fruition.
Tom, can we make sure that that goes on the front of the webpage tomorrow? Thank you.
I'll send that to you tomorrow. Thank you. Yeah.
Any questions to John or Kevin on anything else?
I would just emphasize, I know you guys are working hard to try to get a budget, but I'll emphasize what Lisa said, sooner is better than later. I'm personally embarrassed as a resident of the state that we don't have a budget. I know it's not the two-year fault, but come on.
It is embarrassing, and it's frustrating, and it's harmful to so many people.
Yes, it doesn't reflect well everybody's effort that we've done at the town trying to jump through the hoops, and we don't know.
And it's unfair to towns like Simsbury that have been so fiscally responsible and have done so well in terms of planning for their budgets, both school and town budgets.
Thank you. So a question for you guys. One of the things we have on our agenda tonight is a public library state construction grant. We're hearing that those are still available. Is that what you're hearing? It's matching funds for our renovation of our library. Do you have any information on that?
I'm
Not
surprised
specifically, I
to
don't.
hear that.
Okay.
Well, if it's in this year's, I mean, some of those items are not relieved because of
Right.
the fiscal crisis, so there are monies available, certain money, recreation monies that you'd think that those accounts would have been swept. We've tried to sweep everything we can, but for some reason, either we're not allowed to, so there may be monies available still in that line.
We can check for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you both, and thank you for staying.
Oh, my pleasure.
Pleased to have you in town, and we'll keep us updated.
Yes, thanks.
And thank you for your updates. You've done a great job really communicating, and that's been crucial during this time. All right. First Selectwoman's report. Oh, my goodness. I think I'm going to just zip through that very quickly, but I did want to announce that we did receive the Small Cities Grant for the Owen Murphy Apartments in Virginia Connolly residents for $750,000, and that will help our most neediest residents in town with their housing. So we're very excited to that, and thank the board for supporting the grant application. The Simsbury, I'm going to go through, I'm not even going to read this because we've got a long agenda, but, and because Sean's not here, so everyone
I know,
please tell him.
it's just not worth it without Sean here.
But I do want
Maybe we'll show up.
to shamelessly plug this. You still have time to read this book. We're doing it on Wednesday. I hope somebody out there has read it. It really is interesting. You can read it in 2 hours, 2 to 3. So if you are interested, come join us on Wednesday night for the community read and discussion. We won't actually be reading it, we'll be discussing it. But please do take a minute to look at everything in the First Selectwoman's report. It is packed full of exciting events coming up. Comes August and September in Simsbury is just an amazing amount of wonderful things to do. So please do take a look and join us at some of these things. We will be giving the Deepwater Wind update. There's an update also in my first selectmen's report, a minor one, but I'll be talking about it later on the agenda. So we will move on to action items. The first one is tax refunds. May I have a motion to approve tax refunds in the amount of $32,877.05?
So moved?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Going on to item B, shared parking and services agreement, Eno Hall. Okay, thank you, and Fiddler's Green. Could the record, Kathy, reflect that Mr. Payne recused himself? The town of Simsbury and Fiddler's Green have been working together for over a decade to address challenges of limited parking in the area. And in fact, we've had informal arrangements with Fiddler's Green for many years, so we're very grateful to partner with you. Earlier this year, the Board of Selectmen heard a presentation on parking in the downtown area that discussed shared parking agreements. Mr. Roy will walk us through the content of the agreement for shared parking, which is being presented tonight and is really based on the work that they did with the parking study. And we believe it will provide better management for both properties and serve as a model for future agreements. I do want to let folks know that if it doesn't work out, there is a component in there that we can readjust it. Basically what it does is it puts it in writing what we've been doing anyway. And so we are excited to hear about this. And Tom, if you want to come up and walk us through it and to partner with our business community.
Such a narrow gap there, Tom. I didn't think I could quite fit these days. As Lisa said, this is the first time that we've really employed a formalized shared parking agreement. We did hear about it, I guess it was about 2 months ago with the proposal from Desmond Associates and the downtown area parking study they did. I think the real critical thing here is that this is effectively a legal agreement that comes down to a handshake arrangement. It's how can we best work together with our neighbors. And before we go into the details of it, I have to give credit to the owners of Fiddler's Green that are here tonight for the work that they did in making sure that we could come to terms that worked for both the town and for their property, and also to Main Street that facilitated this, and Mike Glidden from Planning who helped us work out some of the details.
And social services.
Social services that was clearly as the residents at Eno and SCTV as well. So it was really a lot of different players to come to what really comes to just formalizing some of the arrangements that have been in place for a decade and finding a few places that we found we may actually be able to benefit even further. With the parking, we basically said that the parking directly behind Eno should be essentially for seniors and that we'd rather not see employees of either facility parking there. The parking lot behind Fiddler's is going to follow that same suit. During the week, seniors using Eno can park at the Fiddler's parking lot right behind their building up until 11:30. And all of these things are going to be communicated through our town staff working with the seniors, through the management at Fiddler's. And it's just simple courtesies that we're going to be looking for all of our users and patrons to follow. Clearly, if an employee has a handicap parking sticker or a mobility issue, they're going to park closer to the building. Again, this comes down to just practicing common sense. We're going to try and limit signage. We'd really rather not see signage all over the place about who can park here when. We want to make patrons of both facilities feel comfortable that they are allowed to park in those upper lots. During the large events down at the Performing Arts Center, Fiddler's is going to continue to use Eno parking just as they have in the past. We're going to provide them with barricades so that they can cordon off the parking accordingly. And what's interesting, if you talk to the Fiddler staff, if they have a smaller crowd that night, they don't cordon off the entire parking lot. They'll only cordon off a portion. They really have historically worked to manage it in the fairest and most equitable way that they can. Delivery vehicles and things that need to cut through because the parking lots have adjacency. Again, that's all going to continue, and that's just going to be solidified in the final agreement. Snow removal, same thing that's always going to be. We take care of our lot, they take care of their lot. If for some reason there's a problem, we're just agreeing to communicate. Where things got a little interesting is we realized there's a lot of dumpsters in that general vicinity. And quite frankly, the amount of trash generated at Eno for a senior center is relatively small compared to a complex that has a number of restaurants. So Fiddler's has offered to allow the town to utilize their dumpsters, which then eliminates the need for us to have dumpsters on our site. In understanding of that, our maintenance staff is going to clean the dumpster facility at least twice a year. We're already there. It's something that benefits us. So as we're using it, we're going to just make a point to keep it clean and power wash it on occasion. We have the equipment, we have the staff to do it. And in turn, that's going to save us our fee for disposal of our trash and recycling. There's a minor issue with an easement on the property of Fiddlers and the location of our existing street. We're agreeing that we're just going to continue as we always have. We're not going to worry about exactly where the property pin is as opposed to the fact that it's always been a traveled way. And really, as Lisa said, if at any point either of the facilities find this is not working, we're going to be able to notify the other and either correct and amend in a way that works, or we're going to be able to walk away from the deal. The deal is it's going to be structured in accordance with having the dumpster at its current location off of Railroad is going to be a 5-year term. And really, I think that's the crux of it.
Yeah, I want to mention Fiddler's Green has offered to actually shovel the steps leading up from the area of the parking down next to the dumper. So thank you for that as well. And I open it up to questions. I want to thank everyone for working on this. Our primary goal was to make sure those who have trouble getting to the senior center because of either age or disability have the most access, and that's really what we were trying to do. And we were trying to do it in a way, I think Fiddlers was very understanding of that, and they said, hey, you know, our patrons don't really show up till 11:30. We know you offer classes beginning at 8:30. Feel free to use our parking lot. And we said to them, most of our activities are over between 3:30 or 4:30, and once those clear up, feel free to use ours. So it was, I think, a nice fit.
Yeah, and I think the bulk of this is historically been done, and this is just a chance to formalize it. And the other thing, on a quarterly basis, myself and the property manager for Fiddlers are just going to make a point of communicating, whether in a phone call or an email, to say, how's everything going on your side? So that anything that may even be the slightest bit of an issue gets caught early and can be adjusted for.
Open it up for questions.
Elaine?
Elaine?
Just, does the streamlining of the refuse disposal open up any new parking spots?
There is potential that we may be able to make some modifications in the Eno lot and maybe get another spot or two.
Cheryl.
Is that okay? Is there any other reconfiguration going on with that portion of the driveway that's rather steep and goes down towards,
Yeah. One of the things that we talked about while we were out there, since the two facilities already do share an adjacency,
yeah,
we have the ability, because we have, any deliveries can actually travel through the two parking lots, we have the ability to get rid of that steep embankment. And
Yeah,
I think,
that's just not-
I think really that's the right thing to do, is we stand out there and look at, one, the condition of the pavement
My
already.
car thanks you.
Yeah.
Yeah. As one who tries, every once in a while, I just wing it.
And I know it's been a long night, but I gotta tell you, if you need to lighten it up, just think about the poor delivery truck that tries to leave down that
I know.
exit. And as the rear of the truck comes down, there's a steel step that on occasion has gotten stuck. And the truck will not go until a tow truck comes. Seen it a few times, very embarrassing for those poor folks.
I'm sure.
So
So,
we're looking at potentially putting either, just by simply grading, or maybe putting in a very small retaining wall. And we may actually be able to get more angle-in parking off of Railroad. And
Right.
also, we're looking to do some parallel striping on Railroad once this is done. We did just recently, if you've been to Weldon's Hardware, right in front there,
Right.
we did parallel parking
yeah,
spots.
which is great. That's,
And the only reason we didn't do it on Railroad is we wanted to wait and see how this all shakes out and whether or not we can eliminate that ramp, potentially even this construction season.
that would be great. And that would open up another
Several
space
spots,
or
yeah.
two on the
Yeah.
street.
And it's a numbers game. It's 1 or 2 here, 2 or 3
Sure.
there, and it makes
But
a
it would all
difference if
help.
you're looking for that spot.
Thank you.
Great.
All right. Well, with that, may I have a motion to authorize the first selectwoman to enter into a shared parking agreement prepared by town council for shared parking and other services between Eno Hall and Fiddler Green as outlined in the memo attached? Were we able to give, did you guys get a copy of the most recent agreement from Bob? You may just have the memo.
Just the
Okay.
memo.
I think we just
yeah.
have the memo.
Okay, so Bob's going to
But
send
you
it to
have
me.
permission to execute.
Thank you.
It's
So,
a- yes.
you're making that
So
motion?
moved, yes.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Tom, thank you, and everyone who worked on this for your
Thank you.
efforts. And Sarah, thank you for being here.
Somebody fetch Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Can the record reflect the mic? Thank you. Item C, approve the resolution delegating oversight of Simsbury Farms Pool and Rink improvements, Phase 2, to the Public Building Committee. We have Jeff Shea here, town engineer. The voters of Simsbury approved improvements to the Simsbury Farms Pool and Rink in the amount of $950,000 this past referendum season. Under the provision of Section 612 of the Charter, this project is recommended to be assigned to the Simsbury Public Building Committee. This is something, the Building Committee by law has to do all education projects, but it is by referral from us for town projects. So Jeff, do you want to speak to that at all?
Just quickly, the building committee has actually been working informally on this project already. Reason being, there's a very tight timeline on getting the project underway so that the second phase can be completed by the next swim season. This project's actually a little more aggressive than phase 1. It includes a little more complexity in terms of construction. So it was absolutely imperative that they get started on this. So we're actually at the point now where the building committee has, we've contracted with an architect, we've received bids, and we've actually sat down with the contractor as early as today to kind of just talk through the scope and the fee and to move forward with the contracting. So the building committee's already really engaged in this project, and this is really a formality at this point in time.
All right. With that, may I have are there any other questions? Okay. With that, may I have a motion to approve the following resolution and refer the project to the building committee? Whoever makes the motion, it does need to read the resolution.
Which is on the second page?
Yes.
Second page, yeah. Okay, I'll make that motion then.
Okay.
Just want to make sure what I'm committing myself.
It's not, we've seen worse motions, so, yeah.
Want me to read it now?
Yep.
Okay. Make a motion that resolved in accordance with Section 612 of the Simsbury Town Charter as amended, the Board of Selectmen hereby charges the Public Building Committee with the responsibility for carrying out the design and construction oversight of the Simsbury Farms Pool and Rink Improvements Phase 2 project.
May I have a second? Second. We'll go with Elaine. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have, the next item before us is item D, approve of the resolution delegating oversight of the Eno Memorial renovations project to the building committee. We did receive correspondence on this from the Aging and Disability Committee that I'm going to let Cheryl speak to before we go ahead and make that referral.
Thank you. As the Board of Selectmen liaison to the Aging and Disability Commission, I received the following request this morning. Could you please indicate that the Aging and Disability Commission would like to be involved with matters involving accessibility and other ADA regulations as they relate to the renovations? I will leave the extent of the involvement aspect up to the chairman of the Public Building Committee. They would just like to be involved.
So my suggestion is that we invite a member, or any, of course, anyone can attend them, but a member to be designated as a liaison from the Aging and Disability to attend those meetings. Would that be amenable to you?
Yeah, that'd be great. Actually,
I think there was just
encourage
some
that.
concern that some of the accessibility issues don't get addressed.
Understood.
Right, so.
So Tom, we do not need to approve their liaison assignments. They can just designate who they want.
So I can report back to them that they could designate a
We
liaison.
recommend that they designate a liaison. But of
And then
course,
you could
anyone's-
include them in
I'll CC them on
some
any
correspondence
correspondence.
for the
Absolutely.
building committee on that.
Yep.
That would be great.
Okay. So as you recall, these were capital improvements approved through the budget process, Eno Hall Memorial, so they include bathroom, kitchen, and some sound.
Correct.
So may I have a motion to approve the following resolution? And the resolution is going to need, again, to be read.
I will do that. I make that motion. I move that resolved that in accordance with Section 612 of the Simsbury Town Charter as amended, the Board of Selectmen hereby charges the Public Building Committee with the responsibility for carrying out the design and construction oversight for the Eno Memorial Hall renovations project.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. We go on to item E, authorize town staff to negotiate a construction contract with Simscroft Echo Farms for Town Forest Park improvement. This project did go out to bid. Simscroft Echo Farms was chosen as the company to negotiate with because they were the lowest bid. The capital improvement budget for fiscal year 16 allocated $145,000 for improvements to town forest via the Open Space Planning and Improvements Fund, including the first phase of improvements consistent with the Ethel Walker Woods Master Plan. So they'll be paving the entrance of town forest, putting in some paths and signage there. It includes replacing and formalizing the parking area, new park sign and accessible pathway, bridge at the entrance. 8 bids were received in June and all exceeded the available construction for the project, our estimates. The project has been value engineered with the lowest bidder. Again, the lowest bidder was Simscroft Echo Farms, and the town engineer is seeking authorization to negotiate a reduced scope of work and cost to allow the project to move forward. Funds that would be required to fund the gap are available from funds previously allocated for open space improvements and general park improvements, so that we may be able to supplement them with other funds that we had available for general park improvements. But I'll let Jeff speak to all of this.
So again, because we went out to bid, we felt the 8 bids were a fairly good representation of what the costs were for the project. Being that we had an opportunity to sit down with the low bidder, just to kind of hear what, if any, savings we might garner from changing materials, reducing certain material quantities or certain aspects of the bid. We felt that, it may be counterproductive to go back out to bid, in that we will lose this season. We will not see any improvements there probably till next season. And we just felt that the reductions and the substitutions being suggested were fair in terms of pricing, and that we would get good value from the reductions in relation to the total bid. We felt it was, I guess, proportionally correct in terms of the reductions, in terms of our original estimate. So, I mean, it's certainly unusual. We did it last year with the pool, as you recall. We did negotiate to get that Phase 1 project going, and we felt it was a reasonable value after sitting down with the contractor and reducing that scope of work. So certainly we could go back out to bid. There'd be additional expenditures because we'd have to repackage the bid documents. So it'd be probably a $3,000 to $5,000 premium to do that. There'd be also the loss of time to get the job moving and to get the project complete. We don't know where costs are going. Certainly they're probably not going down. So that's another consideration. But we just felt this was a reasonable opportunity for a fairly simple project that wouldn't probably, we wouldn't find any complexities during construction, that this would be the way to go.
So I open up to questions from members of the board. Mike?
I can just verify that I heard you correctly, Jeff. We have done this in the past, so
We
this is not us going outside of, we're going outside of the normal bid process, but we have done in the past.
Yeah, and we checked with the town attorney, and he's comfortable with it.
So we're essentially taking the lowest bid and lowering it for
We are.
us. That's what we're doing.
Yes. And we may be shifting some funds from a different project. As we fund the open space, we fund about $145 a year, so it may be readjustment of priorities there. But
Yeah, we actually, we had 2 tranches of open space improvements. We had a larger tranche, which we haven't expended yet. So we would be tapping that for about $20,000 to make up the shortfall. We've kind of reduced the scope as far as we feel we can without really affecting the finish, fit and finish, and, the enhancements to the area.
Okay,
all right.
thank you.
May I have a motion to negotiate a contract, for the town to negotiate a contract with Simscroft Echo Farms for a reduced scope of work and cost associated with the project?
So moved.
Second? Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. We have all sorts of resolutions tonight. We have Lisa Cream here, Director of the Library. Before the board is a request to adopt 2 resolutions regarding the State Public Library Construction Grant for the lower level remodeling project of Simsbury Public Library. As you recall, these were approved through the budget process. They involve leveraging town money with state money, hoping that there will be some.
Right, exactly. So as Lisa mentioned before, we are still working under the impression that this public library state construction grants will be available to us.
The state library is holding off making a decision on that availability of funding until there is a state budget. So library representatives are working diligently to finish off this construction grant application, and these two resolutions are required as part of that process.
Any questions for Lisa? Okay, I'm going to need a motion to adopt the resolutions in your packet, which must be read. It's a longer one.
Okay, I'll move.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Resolution of the Town of Simsbury Board of Selectmen, State of Connecticut Public Library Construction Grant. I, Erica Butler, Town Clerk for the Town of Simsbury, do hereby certify that the following is...
You can start at the resolve.
I can start at resolve?
Yeah.
Thank you. Just trying to be thorough.
Yeah, it's good.
Resolved that the Town of Simsbury's first select woman, Lisa L. Hefner, is empowered to apply for a state public library construction grant for the lower level remodeling project of the Simsbury Public Library, the project, and further resolved that in the event the Town of Simsbury is awarded a state public library construction grant for the project, the Town of Simsbury will have local matching funds in place within 3 years of the grant approval date and will initiate the project within 18 months following State Bond Commission approval of the grant award. In witness whereof, the undersigned is affixed her signature and the corporate seal of the Town of Simsbury this day of August 2017.
It's 14th day of August.
Oh, 14, well, I
Yeah.
didn't know if we were to sign it today, but
Okay.
it's 14.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Okay. G, is Tom still here? I think he's down the hall. Melissa, you want to go get him? I think he's in room 103. We have before us a motion to approve Eno Hall Auditorium waiver fee in the amount of $1,000 approximately for the Farmington Valley Symphony Orchestra on December 16th, 2107. Please come on up. What they are asking for is the waiver of the fee, but not to waive the custodial fees. So there are fees that we have to pay our custodians who work overtime in setup, the time of the event, and in cleanup. And those will not be waived, which is typical of our waivers. We waive everything except for the custodial fees generally. They are coming before us because this is the first time that they are doing an event with the Town of Simsbury. As you know, under a new policy, once an event has been approved once, it can go through administrative approvals in the future. But because this is the first time, hi, Tom, thank you. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the proposal?
I'm Mike Galuzzo. I'm president of the board of the Farmington Valley Symphony Orchestra. And Philip James, who is a longtime entrepreneur here in town, is a member of the board as well, and he's present. We are a nonprofit group of volunteer musicians. We're about 90 players altogether. We play in the Farmington Valley. We have played in Simsbury before. We played at the high school with students in a side-by-side concert. Last December, we were supposed to play at the First Church, except we got snowed out that day. But the program that we have scheduled is on the 16th of December, a family holiday pops concert. They're very popular in the past, and we really want to bring a fun family event into the Simsbury community. And as we looked at the Eno Hall, we said, what a charming setting for an event of this kind, and we think it could attract some business to the local restaurants and shops right in the area because of the timing in mid-afternoon. So we're looking for some help, if we can, in terms of the expense of the concert. We are, as I said, nonprofit. We have a thin margin of finances and revenue sources. We have several sponsors and advertisers from the Simsbury community. We have members of the orchestra who are members of the Simsbury community, and we hope to have more of a presence here going in the future as well.
And Tom, can you speak to the fees and how the waivers would work? This is fairly typical of how we do it.
A couple years back, we set up the fees for Eno, and generally what we were looking at is, on the weekend in particular, all of the temperature and thermostats at Eno are actually going to what's called a setback mode. They go down 10 degrees in the wintertime and up 10 degrees in the summertime as an energy saving measure. So we did our best to kind of put a dollar value to how much that's using. And then when you have a big event, we're looking at not just the time it takes to clean the event, but also the fact that you have to clean every restroom, you have chemicals and paper products, and everything that goes into the behind the scenes and doing what Public Works does. We did our best to come up with fees that would cover all of the costs on the worst cases, and that's how we came up with the basic fees. Traditionally, for community-based events that are for charitable organizations, generally this board has waived the fee, and we would do just the fee for the actual custodian time for the setup, the event, and the cleanup. So if it was a 4-hour event, you would typically add roughly 3 hours to that, for the time that they took to set up the chairs and to clean up afterwards.
So do you have a dollar amount?
It would be $45 per hour if the custodians are working.
So, with that, could I have a motion to waive the rental fee for Eno for the Farmington Valley Symphony Orchestra event on December 16th, excluding custodial fees?
So moved?
Second.
Can I ask a question?
Of
before
course.
we, do you charge admission for this event?
We do.
And how much are the tickets?
Typically, it's $20, $18 online, and seniors have a discount online, and students under 12 are admitted free, so we have a
How
lot
many
of
people do
children.
you expect?
We're hoping 250. I mean, we're going to have to do some aggressive advertising to reach the community. We're hoping 250.
Does this have to go through public gathering permits process? No, because it's just an event. Okay. Mike?
Part of me wants to approve this. My other question is, I noticed you're the Farmington Valley group.
Mhm.
How many of your members are from Simsbury?
I don't know that offhand. I do know we do have members. I couldn't say offhand.
Yeah, what I'm looking at is,
Sure.
it's really the taxes from the residents of Simsbury that we're forgiving on this. Not that I don't think what you do is good, because I happen to know an individual that's in your group, and in spite of that, I still think it's a good, no, I'm kidding. It's a very good group.
That's
So,
a fair point.
yeah.
Any other comments on this?
Is there a way to waive the fees to a certain dollar amount? I mean, so if we said we're going to waive $500 of the fee instead of does that cover your costs, or is that not helpful?
I think that would be a reasonable approach to it. Again, yeah, that would probably be very reasonable.
If that doesn't cover your costs, then.
It's so difficult because not even knowing the total number of people that we're going to be talking about, and again, we're taking some estimates on heating costs, and I'm hoping it's going to be relatively warm December this year. There's a lot riding on that.
Okay.
Think about snow and cold weather.
So that might not be helpful to limit you to a certain amount.
I support the full recommended dollar amount. I mean, it's consistent with how we occasionally will waive the fees. I think it's a organization that will provide a lot of value, so I don't see the need to really discuss too much how much we waive, so.
No, I just wanted to know if a particular number would be helpful, but if it won't, then we'll just waive it with the exception of the actual costs.
In some ways, when you ask it, in terms of, it's really just what's the best, I think, for the town. All of these, anything we collect at Eno for any of this goes back to the general fund. It doesn't come back directly to Eno at this point.
Right.
So, and depending, as long as it's your typical 4, 5, 6 events a year, it's not that dramatic or change to our overall budget.
This is a collaborative Farmington Valley, people from many towns. It's a way to be a good neighbor. All right, so I believe we have a motion and a second, Kathy? Okay.
We do.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Okay, now we're getting to the part that I think some of you have been waiting for. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
First of all, I wanted to thank everyone who has reached out to me and other members of the Board of Selectmen, to members of the Board of Selectmen who've reached out to members of the public, and to town staff who has been working. I can't tell you how hard they've been working. I know you may not see it, but this has been all-consuming for town staff. They have put in numerous hours, I would say hundreds, possibly thousands of hours on this, and I do want to recognize them and thank them for their efforts, because I don't think any of us was expecting to be working this crazily in August, but we have been. I wanted to give sort of an update and sort of where we are so far in the process. One of the things we have worked for as a board, and with the board's direction, is to make sure that the siting council, who will be deciding the issue, does it in the most thoughtful and informed way out there. We need to make sure that they have every piece of information they need to make their decision. It will ultimately be made by the Board of Selectmen. And the other thing we've tried to do is, if this thing comes through, and we have not taken a position whether we'll be supporting it or against it, if the siting council does rule to do it, that they do it in an appropriate, thoughtful way that is consistent with the beauty of the town, the historic nature of the area, the rural characteristics of the town. So that's sort of where we have been focusing. I want to recognize and thank the boards and commissions who have taken a look at this. Every board and commission has. If you have not had a chance to read some of the letters, they are all posted on the First Select Woman's web page under Deepwater Wind and Correspondence. Some of them are just phenomenal. We have such a talented group of people who give of their time for free, hours and hours of their time for free, with a passion for research and who really care about this community. And it is worth reading them, because I think it has really informed our perspective and helped us sort of see the depth of the issues that are out there. One of the things we're working right now on Town Hall with Council are interrogatories, and many of them have come from the input we've received from our boards and commissions. So thank you. I mean, this really is a team effort, and they've been doing a superb job. I'm going to run through a lot of things because there have been a lot of crazy developments. And I'm going to start with something a little out of order, because I think it will be of interest to people. When Jesse, who is our attorney, and I went to the August 3rd meeting at the Siting Council, which was meant to be a nothing meeting, it's just, okay, this is the date, this is the date, this is what we're going to do. We found out at that meeting that the Department of Agriculture and the Department of DEEP have requested party status. The DEEP, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, had their lawyer there who said they intended to file a motion that Public Act 943 does apply. And it will be the town's position that when they file that, we will support that motion. And if for some reason they do not file that motion, we intend to file that motion. And should the Siting Council disagree that it legally applies, we are going to request that they do it voluntarily, that they transfer this to the certificate process, because it is absolutely true. This is worthy of a deep and comprehensive review. At that meeting, after the meeting, this is one of those meetings I thought I wasn't even going to go to, because it really is just perfunctory. The counsel for DEP talked to Deepwater Wind and said, hey, we can go through this motion process, but will you voluntarily agree to transfer to the certificate process? And they said they would take that under consideration. So that is now being considered. We have not heard from Deepwater Wind of whether they will be amenable to this, and we have not heard from Deep that they have filed the motion. But so that's one thing that's sort of out there. So let me start there, because I don't want to overstate this, but that was a fairly significant development. And the other thing I do want to point out, there's some misinformation out there. Public Act 943, if it applies, does not mean this project doesn't go through. It just changes the burden of proof with a rebuttable presumption and has a little bit more in-depth analysis, but in no way means that the project doesn't apply. So I don't want to give folks the impression that this is a done deal, whether it applies or it doesn't. But it is something this board has been committed to. Process, I know some of you have only been here for Deepwater Wind, but those of us who know this board knows that we care very much about process, and that process is integral to making good decisions. That's part of the reason we went out to all boards and commissions. We felt it was important that we hear not only from members of the public who have come to us, all of you here, but you should know we reach out to people in other communities, neighborhoods around town. We've been hearing from a lot of people and appreciate everyone who's been willing to speak to us. I want to sort of take us through. It's a little bit of a long summary, but I think it reflects the amount of work we've been doing, which has been really just incredible. I'll start out with Mike and Jeff. We're just on the site today with a soil scientist from Ag who got the permission of Deepwater Wind to go out and do some soil sampling there. So they accompanied them. So that ag is taking an interest in the soil. Again, a fairly phenomenal development. All right, so here's where we are. The Board of Selectmen and town staff have taken the following actions to date. Subsequent to the filing of the petition with the Connecticut Siting Council by Deepwater Wind, this board requested all boards and commissions to provide advisory opinions on the petition and to identify any additional information needed or areas of concern. Boards and commissions, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, have provided thoughtful and comprehensive feedback. Some are in the forms of motions, some are in the forms of letters. Some of them have citations to them. Really phenomenal work. It is worth taking a look. I will just, in summary, although people in the public have said that, the planning did say that the majority of the POCD was not compatible with this project. Zoning did come out and say that this would not be passed under local zoning. Conservation did come out and say that this is, from a conservation standpoint, a little bit better than housing, but they had tremendous concerns, and they list the concerns that they have with the project that would need to be fairly vetted before they would even consider taking a decision. And then there are a bunch of others. I will say that in doing this, not one commission came out and said, we are wholeheartedly in support of this project. Some of them were in support of it, but with caveats and with missing information that needed to be addressed and researched. But there was not one who said, yes, I'm done. All of them, those who were in support of it, felt that additional information was needed, that the application was not complete. This board authorized the town to apply for party status and request a public hearing in Simsbury. Both have been granted by the Siting Council. When you make a request to the Siting Council for party status and a hearing, you don't just call them up. It's paperwork you have to file and you go and prove. So it's a lot of work on behalf of council and staff. So thank you for council for doing that. We have requested, as you know, this board authorized me to request the Departments of Agriculture and the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection to conduct a comprehensive level review of the petition to ensure the proposal is thoroughly evaluated and that critical environmental and land use issues are explored in depth. Both departments have agreed to conduct this comprehensive review, regardless of whether this is transferred to this certification level. They are taking a much deeper review than they would in the declaratory petition process. So we are grateful to them. They have recognized that this is an application that is worthy of that review. Again, a very significant development. Staff has retained the services of an environmental engineer firm, Zuvik & Carr, to evaluate issues on the project and related adjacent areas that had environmental issues in the past. You have in your packets, were included the two summary letters from Zuvik & Carr that outlined substantial information that is needed by the Siting Council before they could reach a favorable conclusion. There were gaps identified, issues and concerns raised. So I would like to thank our town engineer who worked with them fairly closely and for quite a while to do that research. They did review land documents and past uses on other Griffin property located adjacent to the land where environmental remediation did take place and is not being proposed for the current project, and the question is why. And so some of those have not yet been answered. The planning department in this office with Mr. Cook have reached, and with Ms. Appleby have reached out to residents on landscaping concerns and held a public session to get feedback on what residents would like the area to look like should the project go through. It is not okay, I believe, for us to say, you know, regardless of what your position is, you can say, I don't want it to go through, but it might go through. And if it does, it, gosh, ought to look beautiful. And so we do have to have a plan there. And we do have to put that forward to the planning board. And it would be negligent of us not to reach out to our residents and find out what it needs to look like. We know from the Historic Society, who gave an opinion, from the Historic Commission, from the Planning Commission, from Conservation, that how it appears and looks is super important. We have worked on sense of place in this community for really hundreds of years, and Simsbury looks the way it does because we are committed to that. So there is that process going on as well. We are hopeful that we will hire a landscape architect to work with us, but if that's not possible, we do have our planning director who will forward, and we will make the request that they hire the landscape architect to work with members of our community should this pass. We have authorized town council to file a motion to extend the discovery period. That motion is still pending. Since that happened, the Department of Agriculture has also filed a motion to extend the discovery period as they are not available to attend the September 12th hearing date. And we will be supporting them in that request because we think it is important for a party, a key agency of the executive branch of the state of Connecticut government, for them to be there, because that involves also not only just the hearing and the transcripts, which they'll have the ability to read, but there is a site visit. They'll be hearing from members of the public. It is important to get, while you can read stuff, being in a room is very different. Seeing reactions, body language can be different than words on a paper. So we will be in support of that. Deepwater Wind has opposed our request to extend the discovery period, as well as they have opposed agriculture's request to extend the discovery period. The Siting Council's unfortunately regular meeting for August 17th was canceled due to lack of a quorum. So we believe their next hearing will be on August 31st. So we have to proceed as if we will not be granted the extension, which is why we're working sort of furiously on interrogatories right now. We have about 80. That we put together based on town staff and commission members who have worked so hard to give us information. I think once you see those interrogatories, once we have them, they'll be published with the Siting Council, and it really does sort of tell the story of what needs to be looked at. You will get a sense of what our staff has been doing and what our boards and commissions have been doing. Really phenomenal questions and phenomenal work on their part. Based on a review of the petition by our boards and commissions, experts and town staff, and further numerous meetings, both formal and informal, there is a strong consensus on the following points. We have not yet made our final decision, where we're going to go on this project, other than it better be reviewed thoughtfully, carefully, and thoroughly. And if it does come through, it ought to look beautiful. And we do know that our boards and commissions, not one of them came forward and said, this is a go. You don't need to do any more work. So that said, here's a couple of things that we definitely know right now, at least from my perspective, and reach out to the board on this. The petition, as it currently stands today, lacks sufficient data and information for the Connecticut Siting Council to issue a decision at this time. The reviews conducted by our boards and commissions, town staff, and experts have identified significant gaps in information presented in the petition, including questions about the adequacy of the environmental reviews done to date. The decommissioning plan presented by Deepwater Wind plans for buffering, views of the solar array, historical gaps, and numerous other issues. These gaps will be addressed in part, perhaps, by interrogatories prepared by the subject matter experts working with town council. Until those information gaps are addressed, a final assessment of the project proposed in the petition is really not possible by the Siting Council, is the town's position. They do not have the information they need to make a thorough and thoughtful decision. We believe that the Connecticut Siting Council review process, and this is again a consensus view, I think even from the executive agencies, should utilize the highest standard of review possible. So, which is why we are in support of DEEP's motion to, that Public Act 943 does apply, and that this should be moved to the certification process. There's no question this is worthy of the highest review, because there are conflicting state policies out there. It is a big project. It is in a residential neighborhood, and you should not do this lightly. This is a project chosen by the state of Massachusetts. It was not chosen by Connecticut. And because of that, it absolutely needs the highest level of review. And I think everyone in this town agrees with that. I would be surprised if we found anyone who didn't believe that. Although, given what happened this weekend, you never know. There is consensus that historical landmarks which define the character of Simsbury, including a residence on Hoskin Roads and the tobacco barns located in the project site, should be preserved for historic and scenic reasons. I am very clear that the section of 85 along by house number 85 on Hoskins, and the southern side of the project needs to go. That is a scenic road identified by the POCD. There's no question that it has incredible historic significance there. And I think we are hearing that over and over. The Historic Commission agrees with that. The Simsbury Historical Society made that recommendation. As you know, Planning Commission pointed out that this is an important area in the POCD. Another consensus item is that the project should be reduced in scope to lessen the impact on abutters, the public, and the proposed visual buffering should be improved and based on visual elements characteristic and already existing in Simsbury. I think everyone agrees that vinyl fence is not happening. We will be out there protesting if they put up a 10-foot highway vinyl fence along Hoskins. That's just not going to happen. This impact can be mitigated by reducing the size of the project. I think everyone says this is a 5 pounds of potatoes trying to be shoved into a 2-pound bag. And so the question of solar panels, are there more efficient panels that can be used to reduce the scope significantly, is an important one that needs to be explored and evaluated, whether you're for the project or not. If this goes forward, it needs to be in a reduced scope and a reduced footprint. The project, and also buffering, needs to reflect the interests of the homeowners who abut the project. It's not okay if they don't offer individualized buffering plans for those homeowners. It's just not. Deepwater Winds needs to provide a more robust financial support and decommissioning package. Right now, we do not believe what they have proposed is enough to pay for the decommissioning, and that was pointed out by the Clean Energy Task Force, and I see Mark Scully here, so thank you for that information. The questions and the interrogatories in there, and our position is based on the Clean Energy Task Force recommendation on that aspect, so thank them. In terms of procedural status of the Connecticut Siting Council review process, as I mentioned, our attorney Jesse Langer and I attended a pre-hearing conference on August 3rd at the Connecticut Council's office. Also in attendance were representatives from Deepwater Wind, counsel for the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and representatives from the Department of Agriculture. As a result of that meeting, interrogatories are due by August 29th, 2017. Staff and town council are working on these now. And again, I do want to thank those boards and commissions who submitted advisory letters. They are the basis for many of those interrogatories. I'm very appreciative of the work that they have done on that. Any person seeking to be admitted as a party or intervener is requested to file a written petition with the council on or before September 5th, 2017. Things do change, so please check the Siting Council's website to make sure you have the accurate information. A public field review will be held on September 12th, 2017 at 1:30 p.m. That is subject to change. If our motion to delay the discovery process is granted, that may change. But it will begin at the intersection of Hoskins and County. Council members will then drive the site area on the perimeter. We did request that they go on foot. That was not well received. They will be driving it. They will go on foot behind County Road. They'll probably go on foot there and on Hoskins, but not in the other sections is what they indicated, but they'll be driving around the neighborhoods in that area. Deepwater Wind did offer to do a drone oversight of the area, so we do anticipate the Siting Council members will have access to that to see it. An evidentiary hearing session will begin at 3 p.m. on September 12th, and that'll be at Eno Hall, to provide the petitioner parties and interveners an opportunity to introduce exhibits and witnesses and to cross-examine positions. This will be held at Eno, and all parties and interveners will have the opportunity to do the same. So that's really important to understand the difference. That's not for the public, that's party and interveners. So it's a defined class who will be participating in the evidentiary hearing. A public comment hearing session will be held at 6:30 p.m. on September 12th at Eno Hall for the public to make brief statements into the record. They did indicate that because of the anticipated number of people that they expect to attend, that comments may be limited to 2 to 3 minutes, so please keep your comments brief. You can submit longer written testimony, but the actual speaking time will be brief. So please, to the extent you can, submit written comments as well. A continued evidentiary hearing session is scheduled for October 10th, 2017, beginning at 11 a.m. in the council's office in Hearing Room 3 in New Britain. So it was a strange discussion we had on August 3rd when we were talking about the delay, and counsel for the council, I don't know, attorney for the council, indicated that she felt it would be okay to continue to hold the hearing on September 12th so long as they continued it to October. That is not what agriculture wants, and we will be supporting agriculture's position on that. But we don't know how it's going to go. So just to be aware, if it's continued, it will not be continued in Simsbury. It will be continued in New Britain. As I mentioned at the August 3rd meeting, Council for DEP indicated their intention to file a motion that Public Act 943 is applicable to the current petition and request that petition number 1313 be transferred to the certification process. As I mentioned before, it is our anticipation that we will be joining that motion in support of it. And if for some reason DEP is unable to, and there may be a reason why they don't file it, and I'll get to that in a second. If they don't, we will be filing our own. Council is now working on that motion as well. On August 9th, the Siting Council invited comments from parties and interveners relative to the following, and here's where things get a little bit interesting. I mean, this whole thing is interesting, but here, just from a procedural point of view, they asked for comments as to whether DEEP's August 1, 2017 request for party status is non-discretionary. Are they a party as of right? DEEP made the statement that they felt they didn't need the Siting Council's permission to be a party, that they are a party as of right. And I haven't done that research because we are not a party as of right, but we were granted it, so I didn't go there. The second question they've asked for comment is whether DEEP may participate as both a party and a voting member of the council, because DEEP is actually a voting member of the council, and that is a fairly interesting question. And where they will end up on that answer, I don't know. The town of Simsbury certainly would like them to be a party and would like this project to be transferred to the certification process so that it's given a thorough and comprehensive review, and we hope that Deepwater Wind wants that too. I mean, everyone benefits if there is a comprehensive and thorough review of this project. I just don't see why you would object to that. So it is anticipated that the town of Simsbury will support DEEP's party status and DEEP's position on these inquiries. We're going to look to them for their guidance on that, but we will be in support of DEEP's position. And we believe that that the public interest is best served by having DEEP as a party, as they have the expertise to evaluate the project in the best interest of the public, and they also have more staff than we do. So they have more staff with more expertise, so it is advantageous to not only the town of Simsbury, but the great state of Connecticut, that this be thoroughly vetted. The Department of Agriculture, as I mentioned, has filed a motion to extend discovery and hearing until after October 19th. So this really could be drawn out, folks, and we're going to watch that. And we will be in support of that because we do want agriculture to participate in this thoroughly. I think it is really important. They have an interest in preserving agriculture. Part of the reason why this site was not selected, there was another site that was not selected by the state of Connecticut, Candlewood, because it had forest, core forest. Ours was not selected by the state of Connecticut because it was prime agriculture. Now, that said, I want to make very clear to the folks that if this project doesn't go through, it doesn't mean that this land is going to continue to be farmed. It is owned by a private individual. He can build houses, he can build retail, he can build commercial on parts of the area. There is no guarantee that this will be preserved as agriculture. But when you think about state policy and where tax dollars are put, there's a state policy that say you get credits, you get advantages if you keep the land as agriculture. And in fact, Griffin has taken advantage of that. They pay less taxes because of a state policy that's out there. Sometimes forests are preserved and they pay less taxes because of another, I think 490, I can't remember the number, act where they get advantageous. And the question is, when you then take another state policy that takes away the advantages that the first state policies were meant to preserve, that's kind of crazy. I mean, in terms of policy, whether you agree with the outcome or not. But if you are going to supersede one policy over others, you have to do a thorough vetting to make sure that it is worth superseding one policy over the other. You should do a cost-benefit analysis to make sure that you're doing the right thing. You shouldn't just do it, because there are the conflicting. One thing is clear, we saw from the state legislature, a little trouble getting stuff done, but state policy is not good. It needs to be fixed. We need to look at Minnesota, we need to look at Massachusetts in terms of what they're doing. That's an issue for another day. Those aren't issues that the Siting Council will consider, but they certainly frame the discussion, and they should consider it in terms of giving it the in-depth consideration, because there are conflicting policy issues there. So that is sort of where we are in terms of what's been going on. I hope you get a sense from what I just went through. That is a ton of work. That is not a little amount of work. That is more work than we've worked on any other project. And it's required more people, more boards and commissions have weighed in. In some ways, it makes me so proud to be a part of this community, because people, you know, some people gave it more attention than others, but I will say that everybody is looking at this and taking it seriously and giving thoughtful consideration. If you have not read the board and commission advisory letters, it is well worth doing it. It is phenomenal. You get a real sense about the talent of this community, the passion of this community to care and really be good stewards of this community. And I've just never been so proud in seeing what people have done and our staff has done. And I want to applaud members of this community. We do not agree. There are different positions out there, and not one of them makes you evil. You can disagree and still love your neighbor. And I think we do that, and I think Charlottesville would benefit from visiting Simsbury, just as Martin Luther King came to Simsbury and saw what a great community this was, and it inspired him, by his own words, to go into the ministry after being in Simsbury. And I can tell you, I know why, having seen the work of this community. So I want to open it up to members of the public, because they've had an opportunity to meet with members of the community, talk with boards and commission members, to read boards and commission members. They've all read the petition. That in itself, how many people have read the 1,600-page petition? Come on, guys. If you can read that petition, you can read this. I'm just saying. So I'll open it up to members of the committee to just give comments and a sense of where we are. We do not necessarily have to take a position tonight. We do need to take a position eventually. There's some information out there. We will, if we don't do it tonight, we will schedule a public meeting. I do need to have the position of this board before I put together my testimony, which is due, I think, after the 29th of that, but I will need the board's direction from that. It's not, I can't take a position on my own. The way our form of government works is that it is a town position. And so I open it up for members of the public. Mike, you want to start us off?
I'll start you off. This is a huge issue, probably even bigger than the Hartford coming to Simsbury, looking historically. It has way more impacts a lot more people, because at that point, that would have been in the 70s, they had just built Simsbury Manor. A lot of Lincoln Lane and stuff was not as developed. That was just kind of open space, and frankly, there was a pig farm over there, so nobody really cared about anything. I am still going through all of the reading, but I have to admit, I am beyond impressed with the depth of the information that's out there and the passion. And it does fall on either side, and still haven't made up my mind where I'm going to land, but I am beyond impressed with what's come out of the town and the town staff. I mean, you're being modest in how hard they've worked. They've done some phenomenal work. So
I do have an 8-foot map of the project in my office that people comment on, that Mike put together for me, and it is awesome. So if anyone wants to take a look at that. Cheryl, did you want to?
Well, I don't want to keep you all too long, but I'd just like to echo my admiration for what the boards and commissions have done. I live in that area, and I have been, fairly outspoken about not wanting to look at that every time I drive down the road. That being said, I understand the position that we are in, that this could come whether we like it or not. And I think if that happens, we have to do everything we can to make it smaller, make it better, make it work for everybody. Because I do not think that we can stand by and let it go the way it looks now. You know, we're still collecting information, but, you know, it's one of those things that's going to affect a whole area of town. And while there's lots of things to applaud about clean energy and the use of, you know, how we use our land, it's, you know, I just can't support the way this process has been thrust on us, and I think we should do everything we can to get as much information as possible and use that, you know, to make it, if we can't stop it, then we need to make it better. So,
Chris?
Yeah, I strongly support the two levels that the town is pursuing. And this is a regulatory process, so I'm impressed with everyone's attention to detail, and success in regulation is in the details, so I want to echo that. But the two levels to me are critical. Number one, and this is the most, I believe, the most important stewardship I have to the community, which is the focus on the process, and in particular calling the siting council to a full review, taking into consideration the full impact of Department of Agriculture, Department of Environmental Protection. The reason for that is I believe Mr. Kozlov used the right wording, that this is an unprecedented situation. And the siting council actually within the process, I believe, is being called to look at this more expansively than on a more contracted level. And specifically, this is not something that in all probability would be approved at the local level. It's not consistent with our zoning, not consistent with our plan and development. It could potentially be approved, but in all likelihood, it wouldn't. Leading up to the RFP process, the Department of Agriculture said this is not an appropriate site. Department of Environmental Protection said this is not an appropriate site. The Connecticut representative at the RFP said this is not an appropriate site. So if you look at that collectively, Connecticut-centric values is that this would not necessarily be an appropriate site. The one place where that got changed is at the RFP level when it was approved as a site. But what's critical to keep in mind with that, and it's right on the RFP website, that is not a binding approval. All that says is that those proposals have been approved to come back to their respective state, county, and local approval. Now in Connecticut, it's only really going to be state, but state, county, and local approval to be reviewed. I think that puts a huge burden on the siting council to now reintegrate Connecticut values, which to a certain degree have been, recrystallized with the current legislation. I will say the current legislation within that whole spectrum is the one place that would actually allow this to be considered and approved. But nonetheless, the siting council really, I think, has the obligation, and what we need to do, and what I believe the town is very effectively doing, and what everyone is trying to do, is call the siting council to that more appropriate and thorough review. And then secondly, if it is going to happen, I'm a believer, you go in with the absolute best plan, because the quality of your specs going in give us the most control over the ultimate impact. I think, and Lisa, I would just add, at some point we are going to have to come up with our definitive recommendation. And so that is going to have to happen fairly quickly down the road. But that's basically my position, and I think we have an incredibly large stewardship to the community, because the feeling is that, in essence, Connecticut's values got nullified in the process. And I use that word. I mean, it's a legal decision. It's a valid decision that the RFP made. It's a process that Connecticut bought into. So I can't say that it's an illegitimate process. But in essence, it's nullified Connecticut's decision-making values. And by their own process, the siting council has the obligation and the opportunity to reintegrate those. So I applaud the effort. The attention to detail, I think, has been phenomenal. The interaction that everyone has had with town staff, with the state, has been immensely helpful, and we're just going to have to keep working it.
Elaine?
I very much agree with everything that everyone has said, especially Chris's thoughts about the process. It's a part of town that is very near. I grew up on Berkshire Way, so like my neighborhood representing, and live in a sort of a budding neighborhood now, so I'm very fond of those woods and have gotten into all manner of trouble in them in my day. But I agree, you know, we have this process, we have various agencies at the state level that had articulated certain policy values right up to our representative to the regional RFP level, also represented those values, lost out in that final vote. But I think however we come down, and I think we're already, and I applaud all the work that the boards and commissions and staff are putting in on this, because we have a two-pronged responsibility. One, to make sure that we do advocate to the siting council to please reintegrate our state and our local policy values, but also, if this does go through, to be proactive, because I think in talking to people in the area, there are some really great ideas for how this could be better. If it has to go there, if it goes, there are some really great ideas of things that need to be looked at and things that need to be addressed. And I think the best we can do is look at both of those avenues and follow them both, so.
Yeah, one of the things people have said, well, why haven't you guys made a decision? And I will say to you, because this board is very thoughtful and deliberative, we said, let's get the facts, and let's just not hear from one group or this group, but let's really dig and talk to a broad base of our community. And we've done that. Let's talk with experts, our environmental engineer. Let's talk with people who are, you know, we looked at the historical aspect, Dr. Martin Luther King's association with these fields. We don't believe he was on the fields in question here, but we don't know that, and we need to know that. And even if he wasn't, these fields were played a significant role in the history of our minority community. And they are part of American history, and we need to be very cautious with that history and careful with that history. So it's not just even environmental soil and air. It's not even about how it looks. It's also about history. And this community, which, you know, began in the 1600s, guys, this is pretty awesome stuff. But it's also about renewable energy and doing what's right for our environment. So those are also core values that this community believes in. And I think everyone, even those who are opposed to the project, believe in that. The question is it appropriately cited? Is it too big? Is it too ugly? And these are the things we're still gathering facts on. And the one thing I just want to caution, and the way I view this analysis, is that as the facts change, my opinion may change. We have, our opinion should be based on the facts presented before us. It's not like you draw your line in the sand and stay there. As you get new facts, you change your mind. You grow, you advance, you make different considerations. And that's what I hope you want from this board. I hope you want us to make our decisions based on facts, based on who we've heard from, because we all see the world from where we sit, and we all sit in different seats. So the more we hear from a broader base, the better our understanding of these complex issues are for us. So at this point, I don't know that we're ready to make a decision. It will require us to hold a special meeting, probably, because our next meeting is until September 11th, and that meeting will have to be really in the next week or two. So we'll have Tom send out, and Joanne, your availability, whether it's a morning meeting at 7:30 because people do work, or whether we can do an evening meeting. We'll try and accommodate as best we can. For those members in the audience, I don't know if you're signed up for agendas, but if you are not, please sign up for an agenda. Make sure you get notified when the Board of Selectmen puts out an agenda. We do that through agenda notification, not through town news announcements. So we do ask you to look at the agendas and to sign up for those, to make sure you get the Board of Selectmen agenda. So we will be setting that, trying to coordinate our schedule. I think we're all in town now for the rest of the season. I don't know, does anyone planning on going out?
College drop-off.
Yeah, I've got the same, but I'm sure Chris does too, so. Okay, so we may be doing a Saturday meeting, but we are going to have to get that done. But I think, you know, I hope that the community understands the areas of concern that we've seen
that we care about. I think that they're fairly unanimous in terms of the issues that are out there and what we care about. You know, as Bob DiCrescenzo told me, it's like 5 pounds of potatoes in a 2-pound bag, because that's what this is all about. So as we look at this, we're going to continue to look at the facts. We may change our opinion. I hope that we grow in our knowledge and understanding of this issue as we get more information. And so, you know, we'll certainly look forward to the aquifer report that you guys have done. Again, as you get new information, you evaluate your position. So any other comments on that?
No.
All right, so thanks, everyone. We have one more agenda item, which is really exciting if you guys want to stay. But if not, I won't be offended if you leave.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. So one of the things that is happening at the Simsbury Performing Arts Center is they're working on their mission statement. The mission statement ultimately comes to the Board of Selectmen for approval, so I didn't know if we wanted to weigh in on this at all. But Tom and I worked on a draft to put together for your consideration. And basically, the crux of it is, you know, as a 501c3, their mission is to provide a public benefit and service to the community, and consistent with that goal, to add to the community's spirit, quality of life, and economic development of Simsbury and the surrounding region, was sort of the core of what their mission is, and to me, what I want it to be. The Webb report, as you know, from 2012, and again now in 2017, basically said they understand that their recommendations should be mostly community-oriented events with an occasional commercial event, because they understand you got to make some money. But those need to be limited. And we've seen just in general that when they get very large, they're harder to contain for police, traffic, parking, you know, park rules. They just get, I mean, it's in downtown. We're not in a rolling hill area. This is still downtown. So the question is, do we want to weigh in on that? And, you know, we can weigh in as a group. I can send this letter on my own or on behalf of the board, or if people want to send individual letters. One of the things, you know, I did recommend in here, based on conversations from all of you, and I hope this letter reflects on what you have said for many years. I tried to capture the board's sentiment on what we're looking for in it. But to possibly offer a liaison to the PAC board as they make their decisions on events to increase the communication there, and any other issues that they may have that deals with the town. It might just help with the communication and the bridge there. And then the other thing we need to think about is if we want them to do a more limited role, more community benefit as opposed to profitability, then do we need to look at long-term how we finance it? Does it become more like a public library or Simsbury Farms where town funds are directed to it or not? And those are, you know, values I think over the long term we need to think about. And given the governor's budget, we might not have to think about that very hard.
Maybe a short thought.
But you can't say you don't want large events.
You're saying Powerball still hasn't worked out for us?
It's not worked out.
No, I'm trying.
Yeah, so there's, you know, you also have to think about how you fund it, and how is it realistic to be funded, and can you accomplish the goals you want for the PAC with the funding structure that's out there, and maybe you can. You know, you certainly wouldn't look to town funding of something until you exhausted fees, fundraising, and sponsorship. But, you know, long-term, is this more like a library or a Simsbury Farms, or is it something separate? And it could be either one. So, open it up to discussion.
All right, I'll start. I think your question about how we look at this long-term is part of a larger discussion. You know, we're not that many years into the 501c3 that runs the PAC, and I think that, you know, we need to make our sentiments known about how we feel about, you know, what happens there. I like the idea of having a liaison. I think that would improve our communication and this board's information prior to, you know, having a sort of a breakdown of communication that would cause problems. So I would totally endorse that. And I think that we should encourage them to take the Webb report's analysis to heart and if it's just a matter of limiting the size of events, I'm not opposed to having outside events. I think some of them are great, I've been to really great events there. But I think we've all seen, where there could be improvement in the organizational, the management structure down there, and it could just be a learning curve, or it could be something structural that we need to give them a little more guidance on. So I would support sending the letter. I think it's good, but I think it's a starting point to some more discussions that we need to have with them about how it's going, So that's where I would fall on that.
Chris?
I would really ditto what Cheryl said. There's two things in here. One is, I'm not against the larger events by any means, but, focusing on leveraging even more local ones. And then secondly, the sense of partnership with the community. So I think those are two very good themes, and so I would support sending it.
Yeah, I would agree as well, and also support the idea of the liaison idea. I think there are some transparency issues in the planning of events and in the pricing of events for community groups, and as opposed to commercial events, and that there could stand to be perhaps some process and transparency evaluation, that better communication, especially since we are, as I understand it, kind of who supervises the PAC board, and it would be nice to have a little better flow of information so that we don't get caught out by surprise, and so that these decisions that really come down not just to the management of that facility, but how does that facility operate within our larger vision for the town. I think it's appropriate that we do that. Mike?
I agree with the comments made. I really like the liaison portion of that. Having been involved with Septemberfest for numbers of years, there's always a process after you have an event of a debriefing and shoulda, woulda, couldas, and the key to that is not having them happen the next year and resolving them. Unfortunately, you kind of have to stub your toe sometimes to realize where you need to improve. There's been more stubbing of toes than I think there should be, and I'm looking forward to the resolution of those. And I know there's a number of great people that are involved that don't want to do that and want to fix it. So I think the letter hits a number of those things, and, adding in the other comments, I think I'm fine with. I think sending it to the whole board, not just Dave Ryan, would be the one comment I would add, so that everybody gets it.
Do we have those addresses?
We can certainly ask Dave to distribute it to his entire board on behalf of
And I think he'd be willing to. I mean, I do want to recognize and thank members of the PAC board, because they, some of these are, in their late 70s, putting in hundreds of hours down there, phenomenal work. The one thing I will say, there's nothing out there that's perfect, but they're making progress. And I think that doing the mission statement, working with the web group is a great opportunity for them. And I think we're very supportive of their initiative in doing that. And I think, as you mentioned, Mike, there are some really talented people on that board that can be tapped to really make this even greater than, our community loves it now, but I think it really has the potential to, as you reach out to maybe the schools, the Hart School, our local theater, this could really just be phenomenal.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if on Friday nights, people just said, well, let's go downtown, let's see what's going on at the PAC, and then we'll go and have dinner, or maybe we'll get dinner to go and go there. I mean, ultimately, I think that's where we all want to get to, and just have it just be a fun thing.
Yeah, or like even just movie night with the senior citizens at the library, or the community, community movie night. It doesn't all have to be high-powered, and you have to find a way to pay for it. So I get that they have financial things, but I think, we all want a place where, like you say, you can just go to.
Yeah, and it's fun, so.
Yeah. So, all right, so then I will we'll put this on my letterhead, and I'll go ahead and sign on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, so that we don't have to coordinate getting everyone's signature, if that works for everyone.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And we're moving on to appointments and resignations. May I have a motion to acknowledge the resignation of Thomas Reckon with our thanks as a regular member of the Board of Ethics effective August 7th, 2017?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. May I have a motion to acknowledge the resignation of William Butler, Republican, with our thanks as a regular member of the Clean Energy Task Force effective August 4th, 2017?
So move.
Second.
Cheryl was the second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. You have in your packets a draft of the special meeting July 27, 2017. Let you guys take a minute to look at those and see if there's anything you want to change. If not, that will remain the final minutes.
Did you get the typo in the first Selectwoman's report on the first page, down at the bottom? The Frist.
Ah, good catch, an important catch, Elaine, thank you.
I know. Well, you know, Sean wasn't here to make sure that that one was accurately logged in,
Yes, no,
so.
I'm very appreciative of that. So may I have a motion to accept the minutes with the change of the word frist to first?
I'm not going to vote for no. I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are accepted as amended. We'll go on to personnel. Chris and Tom have an update on the approval of the Director of Community and Social Services job description, and we're going to be adding, are you giving an update on the search for town manager as well?
Sure, we can do that as well.
Okay.
So I'll just start by making a motion to approve the revised Director of Community and Social Services job description. As you know, when an incumbent leaves office, as Mickey LaCour's Beck is, our protocol is to review and revise the job description. I think Tom and Melissa informed us that the last time it was reviewed and revised was in 1990. I would point out that if that's the case, I was on the board in 1990.
Oh, you kid.
I was as bold and as wise, but slightly more hair back then. And so really what this reflects is, you'll see there's a lot of bullets in here because it really was trying to capture the totality of that role, both in terms of social services as well as managing the senior center. The other element that is in here was also really try to help in terms of, where responsibilities get delegated to staff reporting to this individual. And then we also talked about, there's a couple of bullets in here which speak to the concept which we've talked about, which is increasingly looking at the whole community being the social center, not just the social center itself. So with that said, I'll stop there. I've made a motion. I guess someone needs a second, then we can have a
I'll
conversation.
second it.
Okay, so one of the things I do want to point out is we changed the title to Community and Director of Community and Social Services. And the reason why we did that is after the October 2011 storm, we had people who were in need who would not talk to our Director of Social Services. They would talk to my friend Mickey, or they would talk to the Director of Community Services, but not the Director of Social Services. So sometimes just changing the title makes it less scary. So, and truthfully, it is more, not just social services, but it really is about community services and how we help our communities. So that's why that change was put in, having been through that process, haunted as I am. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Can I do an update on the?
Yes, please.
So an update on the town manager process, and we had forwarded to us a letter, Melissa and Tom forwarded to us a letter from Don Jutton, kind of explaining some of the next steps. So just to walk through the history very quickly, last November, the town voted to move to a town manager form of government. On May 9th, we actually refined hiring a consulting firm to work with us, which was, Don Jutton of Municipal Resources. In mid-June, the advertising went out for the position with the idea that the position would be advertised up until July 21st. The goal basically was to find a pool of, at least 3 to 6 A quality people, in addition to everyone else that applied. During that time period, there were approximately 30 individuals that applied, but in Don's assessment, it was a little bit short of meeting that kind of 3, 4, 5, 6 threshold of A's, and he recommended an additional 4 weeks for both recruiting as well as additional submissions. He has received what he feels is enough of a pool to kind of justify, moving ahead. And so we had previously identified the date of October 19th that we would interview the candidates. What Don is recommending is that we would interview approximately 6 of the best candidates. And then he's proposed there's a couple of options in terms of what we do next. Option 1 is what we talked about, which is we could make a determination, and then the first meeting of the next board, they could, make a vote. One thing Don did point out is that candidates are probably not going to want to actually offer their resignation until they actually know that the new board that's voted is in support of them. So what he's suggested as something that might help with the timing is what we could consider is that this board would interview 6 individuals, narrow it down to 3, and then after the election, expand the executive committee to be both this board as well as newly elected members of the next board. And then even prior to that meeting on December 11th, that group could re-interview the final 3 candidates and then make a determination. So from his perspective, the potential advantage of that is it actually picks up a couple of weeks of timing. So instead of someone offering their resignation after December 11th, they would, in all likelihood, be comfortable enough to do it before December 11th, and then the formal appointment could be made on the 11th. So he just threw that out there for our consideration. I don't think we have to make a determination tonight, but, the personnel subcommittee, maybe would factor that. Any thoughts or questions or reactions to that?
Because my whole hesitancy about this whole thing is this board picking for the next board.
Right.
So this is a nice solution to that.
Satisfies that as well.
Yeah.
Right, yep. Just a couple
I
other.
would agree with Lisa, Chris,
Okay.
that I really like this bridging, for lack of a better term. It was kind of, there's a drawbridge that gets closed here, and there's another one over
Sure.
here, and this gets us bridging, and I do like the idea of not losing that month-ish,
Right.
month and a half.
Okay.
I really do like that concept.
So I think we can indicate to John that, we're fairly favorable towards that. I actually think there's one other advantage. I believe interviewing twice your best candidates is going to give us a much better perspective. The other thing that he is going to initiate is, during September, he wants to initiate the focus groups and hearing. So what he's proposing, again, which we heard before, is to do 2 to 3 focus groups, which would be a combination, and we could issue an invitation for people who want to participate, as well as we could reach out to people. And then during the evening, he'd like to do an open hearing and have members of the public come down. And then the other thing I just want to talk about is what his process is going to be is he's asked candidates to respond to an essay question. And so when he receives those, he's actually going to be interviewing people as well, just to give you a feel for his process. And then finally, I do want to remind people that there is a survey that's out on the town website to provide input in terms of what are critical issues you perceive that the town is going to have to manage, as well as what would be attributes of a town manager.
So I actually did not have that in my first Selectwoman's report. Can we add that before that goes online? Because it's not long enough.
Good thing you didn't read it.
So we should talk that up to people who we're interacting with.
Yeah.
And employees have been encouraged to participate, which I think gives us a really interesting perspective there. And, we should encourage groups that we're liaisons to and members of to participate. So that's it. That's the, process to this point.
I think Don is making phone calls too to some staff members.
Yes,
and,
he has interviewed some key staff members,
Yeah.
right, yep,
So that process is already going on,
yep.
which is good.
And of course, he'll be at the third wave book discussion.
Everybody who's anyone will be
Anybody
there,
will
so.
be there,
What a
yeah.
bunch of suck-ups.
I hope somebody shows up to that. It is a good book. I read it
No.
twice.
I tried to sell it to newcomers and they just,
No.
I don't know, you know, there's a lot of books.
All right.
The only other thing
I'm
we
just
talked
kidding.
about was a backup date for October 19th.
Oh, yeah.
Potentially, if people can save the 26th as
Yep.
just sort of, as this whole
We
thing
have
shakes
generators
out.
now, we don't need backup dates. That's a good idea.
Let's do that.
Okay. All right. Any other liaison updates?
I don't have any.
Oh, I have one, sorry. I'm writing the date down. The Aging and Disability Commission is sponsoring the picnic in the park on August 26th. That's a Saturday, from 11 to 2:30. We would encourage any families who have a family member who is disabled, and that can be any disability, to join us. It's a free event. It will be at St. Catherine of Siena Church. It's always been a lot of fun. There's a lot of activities for kids, a chance for the adults to mingle and socialize, and a lot of times you will see, you know, some members from the school board there, you know, offering advice, you know, just getting a chance to meet students who might be coming in who have disabilities, and they get to meet other students.
And the food, there's hot dogs and hamburgers and ice cream. It's fun.
Which is expertly cooked.
Yes.
By
you.
volunteers, yes.
I do the eating, you do the cooking.
I've got
division
dorm
of
move-in
labor.
that day. I'm actually
I
disappointed. It's a great
know.
event.
And there's an ice cream truck and,
Oh, it's the best.
oh, it's great. So I would encourage anybody who's interested to join us. It will be a lot of fun.
And thank you to the Aging and Disability Committee for
Yeah,
organizing
they do
this.
a great
It's
job with that.
And very much appreciated. I did want to let members of this board know there's a ribbon cutting for the Silverman Group on Wednesday at 11, if folks want to join me. It's my understanding the Lieutenant Governor will be there and possibly Senator Blumenthal, so.
Excellent.
All right. And with that, may I have a...
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Sean's not here. I didn't have to
Okay,
be
who did
super
the
fast.
Did you get the
They're
second?
checking each
Kathy?
other.
Mike did the second.
Mike did the second.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Yes. We're gonna do a quick,
Trouble,
Oh,
trouble,
okay.
trouble, trouble.